I move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Approval of the consent agenda has been moved and seconded. Do directors have any items they would like to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, please, excuse me, Director Pinkham, did you wish? Okay. All those in favor? I'm going fast, honest. All those in favor of the consent agenda, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. It's 5:09. We start public testimony at 5:30. I would like a will of the board. Do you want to start with director comments now? Or do you want to take a break until 5:30 on the button, and then we make our comments after public comment? Director DeWolf, have at it. Thank you.
Thank you, President Harris. I also have another poem I'm going to read, so I will be, I promise, six minutes like last time. Please do. First, as a citizen of the Chippewa Cree Nation of Rockwell, Montana, I do want to recognize that we are on stolen Indigenous land. I am honored to live, serve, and work here in the Coast Salish territories in the city of Chief Sealth, who was a descendant of the Suquamish, the Muckleshoot, and the Duwamish. Thank you to Principal Howard for the exciting visit to Garfield High School last week. I was grateful to walk and tour and hear about the ways that he's supporting his students. I was especially grateful to connect with another student actually who was also in AP Environmental Science. We had a student speaker at our last meeting who was in Environmental Science, and she had just shared how, as a Muslim young woman, she felt really included in her class and also was super obsessed with environmental science and the ways that it felt really cross-intersectional into history and English and the arts. And also thank you to Principal Chanda Otis, who invited me to visit Meany Middle School yesterday. It was really exciting to go just to another one of our D5 schools, and she shared about some of their successes and their challenges. And I got to walk around and meet students and educators, and I was most especially excited because I heard about their upcoming production of The Lion King, and that is in either April or May, and I will be there. As I remember when I was in elementary school, I used to sing "I Just Can't Wait to Be King" with a friend, so I'm excited to see the full production there. Thank you also to Councilmembers Johnson and Gonzalez. As Director Mack said, we got to visit with them yesterday as part of our regular monthly meeting to just continue to strengthen our partnership and our relationship. And then also, again, just supreme thanks to our CFO, Jolynn Berge, as well as Director Mack and Director Geary, for a very raucous day in Olympia. I will say there was some very impassioned conversations and meetings we had with certain legislators. I won't tell you who, but I will tell you all of the legislators we visited with, and then you can just guess from there. But we got to visit with Senator Carlisle, Senator Peterson, Senator Wynn, Representative Macri, Representative Berquist, Senator Claire Wilson, Representative Pettigrew, Representatives Tomiko Santos, as well as Speaker Chop, and also Senator Frucht. And while we are truly grateful for the progress our state has made in fulfilling the state's obligation to amply fund public education, we are frankly still not there. We look forward to whatever dollars we'll receive from the state. I'm hopeful that we'll at least be able to cover the WSS cuts we had proposed. And hopefully, and what we talked about were SPED funding, lifting the levy for nurses and counselors, as well as we did have one conversation with Senator Hasagawa, who I forgot to mention, about the state being more inclusive about their testing, particularly for students who have different faiths and different observances. Another thing I just wanted to mention and really reiterate that President Harris shared was when I ran for school board, Director Mack and I visited living rooms across the city to talk about certain conversations. One of those was about addressing racial equity in our schools, and we heard over and over again on the trail, I know, that the board needed to have and participate in the racial equity training, so I'm very excited we're able to do that this weekend with the first of 2 racial equity trainings, and I look forward to sharing how that went at our next board meeting. I'm also looking forward to next week's exciting meeting. It's long overdue, but I'm grateful that our district, in its commitment to being a learning organization, is hosting our first ever work session about workforce, more specifically community workforce agreements. And I just wanted to say a special thanks to Chief Podesta, Richard Best, and our board for your support in that. The things I am tracking right now are the loss of a gender-neutral restroom at Washington Middle School, as well as some of their other ongoing issues. We'll hopefully be having some conversations just to get some more answers about that, as well as the Amplify Science adoption, and then finally policy 2015. 2015 is actually the helpful runway to get ethnic studies as a graduation requirement, so I hope we can resolve all of the issues for policy 2015 in a timely manner. And finally, I wanted to elevate, as I've been trying to do at our board meetings, a poem by one of our students at at Middle College High School. This is from Brianna Tran. It's called "Give Me Your Tired." And also, I should say this, Principal Cross. This is actually inspired by you because we had a conversation about a book at our last meeting, and so I've been trying to elevate some of these voices from our students. And so, thank you for you're here. I figured I should say thank you. The poem is titled "Give Me Your Tired." I can say all that where I come from, to where my parents and their parents were born, but what does it matter, our skin, hair, or eyes? It's lineage that matters. The seed which knows how to grow into an apple tree. The apple falls and the seed grows to an apple tree once again. That is our ancestors. The understanding of people is what matters. The history of why I even ended up here, and why I can't find my way back. I can say all that, where I come from to where my parents and their parents were. I'm in a place which was founded upon the idiocracy of a man and a monarch. I'm in a place in which men took over a civilization, a faraway land that they did not need. That was the ugliest time we can revisit, if so truth will be called out. Made their own rules apart from the natives, and called it their own country. Please tell me the story of your origin. Tell me the story of your ancient peoples. I come from the mountains in the sky. Martial arts and medicine. I come from spicy food and rice in baskets. I come from tales of mermaids, dragons, and sea serpents. This was the anthem of my people and not your joke. This was the symbol of my people, not your production. This goes for all. For the freedom of horses should roam and run. The beating of the drum should continue to play. The most richest of lands should have remained untouched. Those chants, meanings would be the song that lived. To the continents of the world, tell me your story. What is the story of thy lineage? Thank you.
You show the book that you're reading from, please, and give the title for the record.
Would it be helpful? Yes, this is from, it's called Tomorrow I Will Whisper Your Name, and it is a compilation of poems by students from our schools in partnership with Writers in the Schools. It's a program of Seattle Arts and Lectures and SPS. Really proud of it. I have all the students from Z5 schools in here, so I hope I can get through that by the end of the year.
Okay, thank you. We are going to take a break until 5:30, at which time public testimony will start. Thank you. Thank you. We have now reached 5:30. We go next to public testimony. The rules for public testimony are on the screen, and I ask that speakers are respectful of these rules. I do not want to rule anyone out of order. I would note that the board does not take public comments on items related to personnel or individually named staff. Thank you. The majority of the speaker's time must be spent on the topic that he or she have indicated they wish to speak about. Each speaker has a 2-minute speaking time. When you are 30 seconds away from the end of your 2 minutes, you will have a yellow light on the podium. Please conclude your remarks when the red light comes on. Ms. Scheck, please read off the testimony speakers, 3 at a time, and when you hear your name, if you would line up behind so we can keep rolling. And thank you very much for taking your time to come speak with us. It is hugely appreciated, and we do listen. Thank you.
First up for public testimony, we have Max Sebastian Pedro, followed by Andrea Radosevich, and then Clifford Mayer.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Maximiliano Sebastian Pedro. I'm from Guatemala, the city of Huehuetenango. I speak Acateco, Spanish, and English. Acateco is an indigenous dialect from the Mayan people. I am a student at Sierra Rose School. I have been at our school for 1 year and 6 months. In the United States for 1 year and 8 months. I like my school because it helped me to be successful. My classmate told me, don't worry, you will understand little by little English language. So learning English was difficult for me. To learn science was hard because I didn't understand, but now I can do it. So problem number 2, I would like to have more clubs in my school. When we move from place to another place, it can be a frustrating challenge. So you have to say goodbye to your friends, family, etc. You know, guys. So I would like that in my school we're given the opportunity to make a group of students from my country and culture. So because the Mayan community of Guatemala is increasing in students, need help so that they can get familiar with the English. The American culture with the American culture, so it's hard for us because we're not familiar with the English. It's hard for us to understand it, you know, guys. So I will work with my principal to make that happen. So anything you can do to support our school, my principal, and our communities will be the most appreciated. So thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today about my experience, so my school and our learning. Gracias.
Hi, I'm Andrea Radosevich. I'm a parent at Washington Middle School. The proposed strategic plan recognizes the importance of educating the whole child, especially if we want to accelerate growth for students who are the furthest from educational justice. Unfortunately, Washington Middle School is a long way from educating the whole child. The administration at our school focuses on test scores to the exclusion of all else. Here are examples of how that looks in practice. Talking to the kids constantly about test scores and how too many kids in the general education program are failing the standardized tests. This is often done by projecting giant slides on the cafeteria wall at lunchtime, slides that blame the restrictive and unpopular hallway and bathroom rules on the fact that too many kids in the general education program are failing the tests. Slides that talk about L1s and L2s, slides that list the names of the students receiving detention that week. This is not educating the whole child, it's public shaming, and it is wrong. The children in our school that the principal refers to as L1s and L2s, these are children with names and dreams and incredible strengths. We need to recognize and celebrate those strengths and build on them. That is what our teachers want to do. They want to educate the whole child, but their voices are being ignored. Our teachers are tired, discouraged, and seeking to leave. Many students and parents say that the school feels like a prison this year. There are restrictions on going to the bathroom, there are hall sweeps, locked doors, security guards banging on the stalls in the bathrooms. When you think about the school to prison pipeline, and then you think about the climate in Washington Middle School this year, that is not a comfortable thought. Once again, this is not educating the whole child. As you consider this strategic plan, please think about how you will make sure it is properly implemented, consistent with the vision of educating the whole child, and what you will do when it is not. Thank you.
After Clifford Meyer, we will have Chris Jackins, followed by Sarah Sentz-Wilson, and then Carol Simmons.
I want to thank Director Geary and other people in the room who worked on the strategic plan. You clearly put a tremendous amount of effort into it. Thank you. It has some great elements, especially what I hope is a new commitment to equity by this district. And I think we should all be thrilled that the board has prioritized predictable and consistent operational systems. Sounds like high standards for transportation, student assignment, outreach, and more. Thank you. But you're not setting those standards for schools. Someone took that out of the newest draft of the strategic plan. Why? At Washington Middle School, we could use some higher standards for student scheduling, for teacher assignments, for communications from the principal, and more. Like maybe the student discipline process shouldn't include public shaming of students who have detention. Gender-neutral bathrooms. We should be able to figure that out. Really. So, I'm asking you to give some more thought to this strategic plan. Do not pass it tonight. Think about restoring what was in the draft earlier this month, that the idea of predictable and consistent operations is possible to be asked for from school administrators and your school buildings. Not just the central staff should be held to these standards. And I know that when you talk about operational, you may be thinking, all right, well, this is not the academic side of things, and what I'm talking about maybe is mostly about academic. Well, we, the families who are the consumers, the students who are the people being educated, they don't get what operational is, what academic is. They just want responsibility in the school buildings and to know that things will be done right. Thank you.
My name is Chris Jackins, box 84063, Seattle 98184, on the strategic plan, 9 points. Number 1, the plan states that students of color who are furthest from educational justice will read at grade level by 3rd grade. Longtime former African American school board director Michael Preston often objected to such an emphasis. Mr. Preston felt that it tended to imply that students in later grades not meeting the cut were essentially already lost. Number 2, the plan claims an intentional focus on African American males, yet the district refuses to reopen the African American Academy. Number 3, the plan is a rote private sector approach, just like closing schools and money following the student. One aim is to try to blunt criticism and cover the district's backside. Number 4, the same is true of the Weighted Staffing Standards Formula, or WSS. Schools that lose librarians, counselors, and nurses get to stare blankly at a formula. Number 5, it is not just money. The district also needs to pay attention and care. Number 6, years ago, the district unknowingly overspent its budget by tens of millions of dollars. There was no obvious percentage improvement in test scores. Number 7, the superintendent has said that members of the strategic plan steering committee were, quote, brave, unquote. Why were their meetings held in secret? Number 8, Director Pinkham has proposed reopening Indian Heritage High School. I ask that someone on the board publicly commit to provide a second to such a motion. I also ask for a second for reopening the African American Academy. Number 9, the money spent on the plan would be better spent on reopening these schools. Please vote no on the plan. Also, please discuss issues at Washington Middle School. They seem to be coming up. Thank you very much.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Sense-Wilson. Members of the Urban Native Education Alliance, as well as our Youth Council and Elders Advisory Council, want to address the issues surrounding the draft strategic plan and the steering committee process. We are on record in writing and in testimony opposing the strategic plan due to the glaring omission of American Indian, Alaska Native students from the strategic plan priorities. Our American Indian, Alaska Native students are some of the most complex, challenging, and misunderstood populations of underserved and underperforming, according to data. Our students with 506 IEP, non-506, First Nations, non-federally recognized, non-tribally enrolled students continue to be neglected and underserved by Seattle Public Schools, including American Indian, Alaska Native students in the strategic plan for Seattle Public Schools would ensure prioritizing resources, focus effort, and increase collaboration with community to solve these chronic, persistent, and multi-generational challenges. Again, we urge you to amend the draft and specifically include Indian students as a priority. Additionally, we need to address both the current and historical perpetuation of trauma and historical trauma on our community. Over the past 11 years, many of us involved in Indian education have experienced, witnessed, observed a multitude of broken promises, commitments, and intentional efforts to diminish our voice and our presence. Duwamish Homeland Acknowledgement, Indigenous People Day resolution, and other attempts to demonstrate good faith and restorative justice are ultimately token gestures that fail to restore our faith, our trust, and belief in your system. Elevating individuals chosen by Seattle Public School to represent Indian community is insulting, harmful to our students, our families, and our community. We would like to, again, you guys all have a copy of this. I emailed it to everybody, and we have yet to receive any response from anyone from the board or the superintendent or administrators. And that in itself is discouraging. And I really hope that you guys take to heart, our message and open your minds to this, to change, open your minds to the possibility of collaborating in an authentic way, and stop tokenizing community members. Thank you.
After Carol Simmons, we will have Tom Spear, followed by Jeremy Manzer, and then Tuz D. Chambers.
Good evening. It is so true that institutional memory is both a blessing and a curse. I was a member of the first Seattle Public Schools Disproportionality Task Force formed in 1985 to develop a plan and make recommendations to eliminate disproportionality in academic achievement and disciplinary sanctions between certain groups of students of color and white students. Many of the same recommendations were repeated through the years by subsequent task forces, but were ignored. Tonight, 35 years later, you will vote on a strategic plan that will benefit a targeted group of students identified as furthest from educational justice. It has been reported that the Strategic Plan Steering Committee did not consult the district's own racial and equity tool during the drafting process that excluded one of the most historically underserved groups of students in our nation's schools. Sadly, Native American students qualify for also being targeted in the strategic plan. They have the highest number of students placed in special education classes, lost their school where they were successful, are currently educated in a school with insufficient instructional space, discipline suspended at or near the bottom of academic achievement and graduation rates, and are now invisible in the strategic plan. Please do not adopt this plan until you can proudly state your unapologetic intention by including Native students who also fit the criteria of being the furthest from educational justice. Thank you.
Tom Spear? Okay. First of all, I want to correct Director Zachary DeWolf. Chief Seattle is my mother's fourth-generation great-grandfather. He was Suquamish on his father's side, Duwamish on his mother's side. There was no such thing as Muckleshoot. It is a creation of the U.S. War Department. They're not on the treaty. You won't find their name because they aren't a tribe. So please remember Duwamish, Suquamish, not Tulalip, not Muckleshoot. Thank you. Secondly, I've been coming here since 2003 when I came on behalf of the Duwamish tribe at my tribal chairman's request to ask you folks and your predecessors to please not forget the Native people, especially the first people, because the Duwamish are still, thanks to George W. Bush, federally unrecognized. So we don't get counted, we don't get served. There are two things that really bother me tonight, and the first is the fact that Licton Springs K-8 is being shoved out, being denied adequate space and adequate resources. Now, I'll let others speak to that. The second is that your strategic plan, which has been months and months in the making, omitted Native Americans in any meaningful way. And that's the biggest insult that I can imagine as a person of more than one heritage. Thank you. I'd like to cede the remainder of my time to Genesis, who will speak on behalf of our youth.
Hello, my name is Genesis Alcala. I am in 4th grade at Licton Springs. My tribe is Chichimeca. It's in Mexico. I would like to talk about being kicked out of the premises of Robert Eagle's staff. Like if we had broken into a place without permission. I felt scared and
Go ahead, you felt scared.
And it conflicted with our learning. There needs to be better ways to handle these things. And there should have been a public apology.
This is a reference. That's a reference to the January 24th expulsion of Clear Sky UNEA program by the janitor with instructions, he was told by someone downtown that we had to evacuate the building immediately and stay out until further notice. January the 24th, elders, children, adults, mentors, everybody had to go. Come on.
I'm here because Washington Middle is a case study in how
Your name, please, for the record, sir.
My name is Jeremy Masner.
Thank you, sir.
I'm here because Washington Middle is a case study in how an arrogant approach to increasing educational justice can instead reduce it. It is unconscionable that over half of Black and Latinx students at Washington do not meet SBA standards, but while the strategic plan calls for inclusive and authentic engagement to reduce inequity, Washington families and staff have seen indifference or outright hostility from the school and district leadership. Strategic priority number 1 calls for students of color to feel safe and welcome. We want to celebrate a reported 60% reduction in suspensions, but we cannot celebrate when teachers complain their discipline referrals are ignored, leading to continued classroom disruption. We want to celebrate reported improvements in safety, but we cannot celebrate when our Black students tells us it comes at the cost of school feeling like a prison. We cannot celebrate while the names of Black students with lunch detention are publicly posted for the entire school to gawk at. Priority number 1 also calls for students of color to be proficient by 7th grade, and we want to celebrate targeted universalism, prioritizing staffing for those students, but we cannot celebrate 2 instructional days lost to chaotic schedule changes at the start of 2nd semester. We cannot celebrate teachers being assigned new subjects with no advanced notice. Strategic priority number 3 calls for culturally responsive professional practice. We want to celebrate outreach to marginalized communities, but we cannot celebrate when the requests of Muslim families for culturally appropriate bathrooms go unheeded for months, only to be suddenly addressed by a change that instead needlessly marginalizes the genderqueer community. I have 2 requests. First, do not approve the strategic plan until you've understood how Washington's focus on educational justice has led to further marginalization and injustice. You must clarify the plan's goals and strengthen the plan's accountabilities to defend against a repeat of this pattern. Second, please update the WSS to reflect Washington's multiple levels of service so that the school can actually provide differentiated efforts to meet the needs of specific populations. Thank you.
After Tuesday Chambers, we will have Vicki Pinkham, followed by Darcy Brixey, and then Joanne Roxayers.
Hello, my name is Tuesday Chambers. I'm the Ballard High School librarian. I'm the ITAC committee member. I'm also on the library steering committee, and I'm also a library content demonstration teacher. Dear school board and superintendent, the new strategic plan will set the course for the district for the next 5 years and help the district focus its resources, work, and initiatives. The draft plan includes a short list of high-impact priorities and measurable goals focused on improving outcomes for students. Yet, we are closing libraries. The letter I'm about to read is from a student at Ballard High School, who I will call Valerie. Dear school board members and superintendent, I'm writing to you today to convey my personal opinion and utilize the voice I have as a student regarding the budget cuts taking place in the fall. I know that I wouldn't be the person I am today without the guidance provided by the librarians throughout my life. From a young age, we're taught to read and to explore the whole other world books provide us. Reading has left a mark on me, and it has taught me so many things and has made me the person I am today. There are countless reasons to why these cuts to our library program should not be considered. For starters, from my personal experience, I didn't have guidance in my household. Growing up, the school faculty members, they substituted for my parents and were role models in my life. The librarians throughout my 11 years of school have provided support and have taught me many things I would have struggled with otherwise. When I was younger, I loved to read, all the way up until my freshman year. After that, I was experiencing things in my personal life that made me lose my will to go to school, yet alone read a book. It wasn't until my librarian convinced me to join the after-school reading program that things turned around. And since then, I can actually enjoy something I've missed. Many students need this kind of guidance and support in order to live up to their potential. Not only do the librarians encourage you to read and to obtain knowledge, but they provide social and emotional support any high school kid would appreciate. Students deserve to have a place filled with people who support them and encourage them to do better. Ask yourself, why would I want to strip these students of that opportunity? To have access to knowledge and resources and opportunities that could change everything. We as students deserve more than that. I hope you take the time to hear our voice because we need you to fight for us and the education we all deserve. I'm here today not for my position and not for me. I'm here for Valerie. I'm here for all kids, and I know every single board member and the superintendent serves all kids. That's why you're sitting there. But what also unites you all are the libraries that serve all kids. So I'm asking you today to please, please, please look at the restoration plan and move the librarians and library programs across this district to the top for all kids. Thank you.
Vicki Pinkham is next, and then after that we'll have Darcy Brixley.
Sorry, I cut in line.
No worries.
We were just asking which one was which. Hello, my name is Vicki Pinkham, and I'm here to talk about the strategic plan, Indian education in Licton Springs. I'm concerned about the Seattle Public Schools strategic plan, that it does not include American Indians, Alaska Native verbiage in the six-page plan, which is down from 35 pages that I understand was the previous plan. I just wanted to reiterate that the Seattle Public Schools is committed, this is their mission statement, Seattle Public Schools is committed to ensuring equitable access, closing the opportunity gap, and excellence in education for every student. What it does not say is that it should exclude American Indians, Alaska Natives, special needs students, or Washington Middle School students. As a parent for Seattle Public School students, I volunteer for tutoring of Seattle Public School students. I do not support this plan, and additionally, I'm concerned that in the next 40 years, my daughter is going to be here with the same concerns. I'd like to cede the rest of my time to Andrea Fleming.
Hi, my name is Andrea Fleming, and I do have a 14-year-old son who does have an IEP. I would not support a strategic plan that would exclude him in his special needs. I'm not saying that that any other student or any other culture or any other color student would be less valuable, but I don't appreciate the idea that it would be saying that my son's needs would be less met, or that they would be, viewed as less important. Again, he does have an IEP. He does go to Rainier Valley Leadership Academy. It's a good school. I'm not saying it's a bad school, but I really would like you guys to rethink your, what your priorities are with the strategic plan. All students are important, and I just feel like at this point, I've seen that Native American kids are pushed aside and not really viewed as important. And again, I would really like you to rethink the strategic plan. Thank you.
My name is Darcy Brixey. I'm a parent, also a line cutter, apparently. I would like to talk to you also about the strategic plan. I noticed it's filled with words and phrases like equity, educational justice, and eliminating opportunity and achievement gaps. I'm perplexed that the plan does not deliberately include access to school libraries and information literacy. Equity is at the very soul of libraries, and it appears that library access and information literacy has been egregiously omitted from the new strategic plan. Time and again, research has shown that student achievement and literacy rates are directly related to access to a full-time certificated school librarian and robust library hours. Information is released at lightning speed these days, and our society is now settling for mediocre or false information by simply clicking and sharing, and you know you all do it. The students outlined in the strategic goal deserve to be given a solid foundation of information literacy in order to attain racial equity. This is the part where I tell you I'm also a public librarian. I work for the King County Library System. I've worked at the Bellevue Library for a number of years, and when the Bellevue School District cut their secondary librarians, it was a disaster. And what that meant was students had no access to a full-time librarian except the ones that could actually make it to the public library. They lost out on enrichment programs. Don't do it. I just want to finish by saying, please consider building school librarians into this plan. I hope that you send a clear message to students and families that a library is a place of equity, and it is very truly a cornerstone of our society. Please include it in your strategic plan. Thank you, and that is almost 2 minutes.
After Joanne Roxayers, we will have Cece Chan, followed by Manuela Sly and Sabrina Burr. Joanne Roxayers?
No, Joanne Sayers. You guys misspelled it.
Okay. Thanks, Gabby. My name is Joanne Sayers Pinkham. I'm in 8th grade. I go to Hazelwolf K-8. As you heard earlier, the Seattle Public Schools Strategic Plan excludes American Indian and Alaska Native and special education students. This is sad to me because this racism adds to my invisibility in school. I'm Ojibwe Nez Perce Tlingit, and my father is Director Scott Pinkham. I've testified before to this school board about ongoing racism in our schools, and not adding these students is racism. It says that I am not worthy of being recognized in the school strategic plan. I'm invisible, and yet here I am. Seattle Public School Board did not add these students to their strategic plan and is hindering my ability to fight for what is legally mine, to be recognized, to add quality to my education as I move towards my path to college. Superintendent Juneau asked what Indian education means and how was Licton Springs moving towards achieving their goal to call themselves a Native-focused school. She gave them 1 year to figure that out. That school needs a place to grow, but that isn't happening. It is housed in the corner of Robert Eagle Staff School, who would like to see them pushed out altogether. Yet the highly capable students have their own school located across the parking lot. How are we going to accomplish something where there aren't any Native teachers on staff, leaders, or elders? As you know, we're on Duwamish land. It is sad to think that people from all around the world are able to keep their languages and their culture when coming to America. Even the signs outside this room have many languages, but none are in American Indian languages, the Duwamish, Ojibwe, Nimipu, or Tlingit. American Indians need a Native-focused school. A Native-focused school would benefit everyone if they're willing to learn true history of their city. Thank you. My leg. I cede the rest of my time to Gabriella. Go.
My name's Gabriela De Santis. I'm a Seattle Public Student School at West Seattle
I'm
High.
sorry.
And I want
Excuse
all Native
me, please.
students.
The 2 minutes is up. You can't cede time that has already expired. I apologize that you didn't make the list, but we need to be fair to everyone. Thank you.
Okay, hi guys. I'm Cece Chan. I'm from Nathan Hill High School, and I'm part of the NAACP Youth Coalition. I want to talk to you guys really quickly about your strategic plan. Okay, so first, in your mission statement, you guys talk about opportunity gaps, and I feel like in order to talk about opportunity gaps, we need to acknowledge that the gap was created by white supremacy, and it's still present in our education. So we can't talk about an opportunity gap without addressing that we're normalizing white norms. Secondly, in the visionary statement, you talk about students receiving high quality and world-class education. Well, what does high quality education look like? Well, let's start with renovations for Rainier Beach High School in 2025. Let's not push that back. You want high education? Like, that's what it looks like. Also, world-class education, what does that look like? Ethnic studies. Our curriculum needs to represent our students. Our students aren't only the descendants of Europeans, and we represent the world, you know? And I'm gonna tell you guys really quickly, I spoke at Olympic View Elementary School this past Monday, and I had the students do a textbook activity where I had them flip through a textbook and count how many times they saw themselves represented in a positive light. And a lot of them, some of them didn't even want to touch the textbook because they said it gave them bad memories. They said that they felt sad and that they couldn't even find a lot of pictures of themselves, especially the students of color. If we want to have a world-class education, we have to recognize the lack of world education in our curriculum today, and we need to fix it. We also have to focus on teachers too. I mean, why is it mandatory? Like, why isn't culturally responsive training mandatory at a district level? I mean, if we're hesitant about that, that's saying something about our teachers and the workforce. And why do we have teachers who are uncomfortable with teaching things like ethnic studies? Like, that says something really big too. And then lastly, in the theory of action, you talk about unapologetically addressing the needs for students of color. And if you guys say that, then you can't get hesitant and threatened about amazing people like Tracy Castro-Gill when she's really trying to push for things. Like, if you guys aren't going to talk about that. Oh, this is the last quote, and this is from a 4th grader. There's only white people in this textbook. There is only one page that has 2 black women. It's not fair because I'm black, and I wanted to see myself in that book. My whole class were sad, mad, and empty inside when they saw the pages. Please take this unfair, racist, rude textbooks out. And I have letters for Rick Burke and the school board from all the 4th graders from Olympic View Elementary School. But thank you.
Hello, I cede my time to Sabrina Sly.
Buenas tardes. My name is Sabrina Sly. I'm a freshman at West Seattle High School. I am part of the Superintendent's Student Advisory Board. I'm here to support the new strategic plan, and at our last meeting, I and the other advisory members discussed the ideas of the strategic plan and agreed that it is needed for change towards racial equity. I'm a Mexican-American girl, and I want to see positive changes in the school district. For example, I would like to see Proyecto Saber classes in every school. When I was a student at Denny International Middle School, I saw that it was a great place for students of color to come together and talk about where we come from, our strengths, challenges, and identity. Unfortunately, opportunities for high-quality education are not always available to students like me. I believe the new strategic plan is a very important first step. I'm honored to be a part of the Seattle Public School District because it is a great district. But like everything, there's always room for improvement. The new strategic plan finally recognizes there's a need to support students of color and especially African American boys. I am not an African American boy, but I understand the importance to focus on those students who are at the bottom of our system. It is long overdue. I heard some adults before me speaking against passing the strategic plan. I respect their opinion, but I do not understand the resistance to work towards racial equity. The color of our skin should not determine the quality of education we get. Thank you for listening to me and the students in Seattle Public Schools.
After Sabrina Burr, we will have K.L. Shannon, followed by Brian Terry, and then Karen Lamb.
So I want to start in honoring the Duwamish land that we're on. And I ask the ancestors to forgive me. Both African American and Native blood run through my body. And what is going on here hurts me. And I know the ancestors are crying. School board, you need to work on policy 2010 to make sure, since time immemorial and both ethnic studies can be adopted. I thank you and I thank this committee for the hard work. This doesn't mean that any child in Seattle Public Schools gets neglected. It is not zero sum. There's a story about a lamp and about a fish. There is plenty if we work together and stop fighting like crabs. My president, Chandra Hampson, was a part of this, and she reached out to her Native community. I have emails here, and I'm gonna give you a few of her words. Note on how I ended up on this committee. I had an opportunity via the nominating process to sit on the strategic planning committee for the superintendent new strategic plan. The 2013 plan had expired. Due to the newly superintendent hired, the timeline was quick. Among the many partners the district had, we, the Seattle Council president, wanted them to slow down and go deeper into the community. The listening sessions, which were a part of this process. In many, we were successful in broadening the district's view in our communities and how they got to the table. When the community partners came back together, we pushed on why only staff, union, and board members were included in the strategic plan community. Shortly after, the district opened up the nominations. Shifting my hat from Native parent and Native Ed volunteer advisory board member, I reached out to my community to share this opportunity. I indicated my willingness to serve in this capacity with their endorsement. This was shared with representatives from the Parent Advisory Committee, the United Indians, the Chief Seattle Club, the UNEA. I appreciate the support I received from those who responded, encourage others to apply. So I just want to be straight on where this is, and the only thing missing on the strategic plan, we have opportunity gaps and we have achievement gaps. We need to add belief. We have belief gaps, and that is missing. You need to be innovative and add belief because we need to work on our beliefs all around. Thank you very much.
K.L. Shannon? Okay, thank you. Brian Terry?
Good evening. In our schools today, a white student is 20 times more likely than a black student to be identified as highly capable. This leads to segregated classrooms, which send a clear message to all students. White students are more capable and more deserving. This is called white supremacy culture. We are infecting all of our students with these hurtful ideas. please update the strategic plan or pass a resolution to identify and eradicate white supremacy culture from all of our programs. The damage caused by our inequitable service model is especially evident at Washington Middle School. Families and teachers at the school are passionate about working together to address this and to create a school that meets the needs of students from all backgrounds. Unfortunately, our school is now ruled with an iron fist. Decisions are made behind closed doors. Information is tightly guarded. Feedback is not welcome. Those who speak up are publicly chastised. Students and staff are silenced by their fear of retribution. Public shaming is now on the agenda. Last Friday, students who received attention had their names posted in the lunchroom, vilifying rather than supporting these students. This oppressive climate is driving away teachers and families. Please help us. Provide more oversight and support to our school before it is too late. Thank you.
After Karen Lamb, we will have Katie Kennedy, and then Rebecca Weinkoop, and then Craig Seychelles.
Okay, I'm coming to you today as an office assistant at Dearborn Park International School. You've seen Miss Zoe bring her wonderful dance troupe coming for you guys lodge. Anyways, I'm here on behalf of our librarian. They call him the bookman. I love giving tours to parents coming into our school. I open the secure doors. We open up to a beautiful library. It's full of books, overhead, iPads. He integrates everything in technology for the kids. He brings in wonderful authors. We've had countless authors come in, talk about their books, get the seed planted about how you can write a book. Illustrators come in and they fold origami yodas. They're wonderful, wonderful librarian. He's always introducing new books, sending out newsletters and to the staff and to parents of upcoming events. The bookman always makes his space open to Picture Day. The science van comes along. He makes room for cause and effect for holding the wheel in the sea of gravity. He's installed a little free library book in front of our office, in front of the school. And the library is a very vital, important part of our school. You mentioned how the gentleman gave you a book. Where did you get the book? Maybe from a library or something. So books play an integral part in all of our children's lives. And I was really floored when I heard that the school district doesn't have a full-time librarian at every school, which is kind of silly. So I'd really love to see full-time librarian with information technology instruction at Dearborn Park full-time. It's wonderful. The kids love him. I get excited to show people around the school. I brag about the wonderful authors he comes in with, and it's almost time up. Okay, so thank you very much for your time, and I appreciate you listening. You have a lot on your plate. I don't know how you do it. Thank you very much. You as well.
Hi. My name is Katie Kennedy, and I'm a parent of 2 children at Dearborn Park International School. One in kindergarten in the Mandarin program, and another in the 3rd grade in the Spanish program. We love Dearborn Park. The immersion program offers an amazing opportunity for our 2 kids to learn a foreign language at the optimal time where their brains are open to this learning, leading to better educational achievement as well as better preparation for relating to and working with diverse languages and cultures. We have a standout non-classroom staff, including our passionate and skilled librarian and music dance teacher and a committed and enthusiastic principal. All the staff are kind and caring and invested in the success of our school and our students. We are a diverse school that reflects our diverse neighborhoods surrounding the school, and our school is a place for all those families, neighborhood families, to come together. We live 3 blocks from our house, or our school is 3 blocks from our house. Our school is surrounded by trees. It's truly a great place. It is a great asset to our community, and I hope it continues to flourish. It can't, though, if we don't change the enrollment structure. We have had declining enrollment for the past 5 years and need your help to change it. We've lost about 20% of our students over 5 years, and the cuts that are resulting from that are really have a huge impact, and we won't be able to continue the way things are going. There are 3 seemingly simple solutions for our school that could increase, that could allow us to sustain in the healthy, successful place that it is. Our wait list needs to be opened up. This would help us next year. Every year we have people on that wait list that aren't allowed to come to our school. I know there's a Spanish-speaking student a block away from our boundary that can't come There's people that want to come, and we need the kids in order to flourish ourselves as a school, and so let them come right away. And then there's changing enrollment boundaries around our school. We would like to be involved in those conversations. I think that's already happening. And then the last thing is we would like a geo-zone so that heritage speakers nearby could come to our school. Thank you.
Rebecca Weinkoop.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Weinkoop. I'm the librarian at Robert Eagle staff. I'm also a parent of 2 students in Seattle Public Schools. You each have a copy of this book by Peter Reynolds called Say Anything, and if you would please read it with someone you love this evening and then consider donating it to one of our 100 schools that don't currently have a copy. I'd like to cede my time to Rose from Garfield.
Hello, my name is Rose Clark, and this is my first time at a school board meeting. It's not for lack of interest that, It's not for lack of interest that I've never come to one before, but rather lack of necessity. The reason that I'm here today is because it has become increasingly apparent that speaking up about changes in Seattle schools is absolutely necessary. The loss of $40 million in funding for our schools will have damaging effects on the staff and students of this district. The limitations that the state has put on the use of local education levies has created an untenable situation, forcing our district to lay off, displace, and cut the hours of staff members at the expense of our education. As a student at Garfield High School, I couldn't stand by and watch as we lost 15 teachers, each of them with fresh perspectives and the potential to form meaningful connections with the student body. I couldn't stand by and watch libraries across the district have their funding cut, denying underserved students the resources that they previously provided. I couldn't stand by and watch my teachers be forced out of their jobs because of a levy cap. That's why I decided to start a Save Our Staff campaign. My fellow students were eager to volunteer, and together we learned more than we ever thought we'd need to know about education budgeting and state government. Last Friday, we hosted a call and email campaign so that people could get in touch with the legislators and ask them to amend Section 203 of Engrossed House Bill 2242. Now, I stand here because I'm unwilling to be passive when only activism is fitting. I protest against the disproportionate number of teachers of color whose jobs are endangered because of our lack of funding. The teacher who inspired me to write poetry again shouldn't lose her job next year, nor the teacher who taught me to always look deeper, nor the teacher who sparked my passion for science. We're losing 15 teachers at Garfield next year and cutting our librarians' hours in half. Garfield, along with 112 other schools that this school district serves, will suffer because of the lack of reasonable funding for education in our state. On behalf of myself and the 54,000 other students of Seattle Public Schools, thank you for petitioning the state to raise a levy cap, and I urge you to continue your efforts to raise the levy cap and find alternative funding for our education so that all of us can get the schooling that we deserve. Thank you.
After Craig Seychelles, we will have Nancy Fisher-Allison, followed by Kimberly Burren, and then Hugh Kim.
I appreciate the comment about being careful who you follow. That was powerful. I appreciated her advocacy as I appreciate the board's advocacy in Olympia and encouraging us to go to Olympia. So next April 2nd, there will be a dearth of librarians in Seattle Public Schools as we go to Olympia and speak to the same legislators you did. And any of your advice about how to get the message through to increase funding to our district, we're happy to carry that to second your motion, but also to try to help get some of those accounting strings on library funding. I was fortunate to sit in on the policy 0030 conversations, and I listened to 8 major points of our strategic goal in looking for action items. 6 of those points touch on libraries. Welcoming communities, certainly libraries welcome all. April is School Library Month, and we appreciate if there's recognition in April that school board members go into libraries and see and be seen. Tuesday, April 16th is My Library Snapshot Day, and many school libraries will be looking for photo opportunities with education leaders in all of our schools. We look for equitable access, and as Darcy Brixey said, that's a cornerstone of libraries. We look for partnerships. School librarians are bringing money into the district in terms of grants. Tuesday Chamber brought $100,000 to Ballard School, and now she's facing a cut. Libraries partner and bring in grant funding to the district. It's not zero sum. Libraries support all students and participate in credit recovery. I think that we could build a course that built library and information technology skills as a credit-bearing class that could be done across the district. We serve and deliver diverse books for diverse students like nobody's business. Please come visit a library and see how we address that. If it's the standalone Native American collection, or it's the sort of collection that you'll see reflected in my library when you visit. Thank you.
My name is Nancy Fisher Allison. I'm the .5 librarian at John Rogers Elementary. I'm here to talk about the students and staff who depend on our library, and not only for books and information. Our library is a safe haven for new students, English language learners, SPED students who need a break from the classroom, children who have been othered in some way, and kids who seek respite from the playground. During informal hours, we offer books, digital activities, board games, and makerspace activities. The library is a calm-down space for several children on IEPs and 504 plans. It is also a place of comfort for children who have experienced trauma and suffer from PTSD. It's not simply the open space of a school library that supports social-emotional needs, but also the teacher who inhabits it. Librarians are committed to creating places that are warm, welcoming, and non-judgmental. Our unique instructional role allows us to notice the whole child. Social emotional learning is woven tightly into our work. We incorporate SEL content into our library lessons and activities, from interactive read-alouds focused on characters' feelings to mixed grade programs such as the Global Reading Challenge. As one of our global readers observed, I learned it's much more fun to work with people you don't usually work with. It's kind of a new adventure. Librarians team with arts organizations to offer programs that have social emotional dimensions. Yesterday, our whole school reveled in Book-It Theater's performance of New Shoes, a story from the Jim Crow South that drew powerful responses from students during library read-alouds. In our discussions, we talked about empathy, dignity, fairness, and growth mindset, concepts embedded in our social emotional curriculum. Although my position is half-time, I'm frequently in my building on my days off. It's a bit like being the Pied Piper. Children invariably spot me and follow me down the hall. Is the library open? May I check out a book? Can I work on the jigsaw puzzle? If this unmet demand exists in an elementary school, I can only imagine the situation in secondary schools where social emotional needs must be an order of magnitude higher. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Kimberly Burton, and I'm a parent at Dearborn Park International School of a first grader who's in the Mandarin immersion, and I'm also an educator of 18 years working for Highline. And I'm here to tell you that Dearborn Park is unlike any other school I've ever been in. I worked in several districts. I've been in many, many schools, and I've never seen a school that is so based in social justice and equity. Real quick story, my son had a new babysitter last year when he was in kindergarten. She came over, and the first thing he said to her was, "Do you care about MLK?" And she took too long to answer. We never had her back. Just kidding. What I'm here to talk to you about is the boundaries. It's a small neighborhood school, and that's part of why it's so special. But things have changed, and so a lot of families are moving in with 0 kids, and we need to start thinking outside the box, releasing the wait list, letting in those heritage speakers. That's really important. And also, I'm really happy that you're letting us be included in the conversation regarding the boundary, that little pocket up there on Beacon. It's a special school, and it's a small school. And I'm also the PTA chair fundraiser. And last year the PTA made 7,000, and this year, as far as our fundraiser, our auction, and this year we were told that we needed to try to raise 27,000 to pay for different things, and we can't do that alone. We need your help. I know the superintendent's coming to visit Dearborn Park next month, and I wish I could be there with you, but I'll be teaching. But it's such a special place. Please help us. Please help us. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Hugh Kim. I'm ceding my time to Houston.
Hi, my name is Houston Kim, and I'm an 8th grader at Washington Middle School. Our school has been in upheaval. Straight off, a major issue that our student body has faced has been the recent schedule changes and following disruption in learning. For the second time this school year, several teachers remarked that the principal had precipitated these most recent changes on her own, with no collaboration. This made the transition exponentially worse than it had to be, and made us fall behind on weeks of learning. Changing hundreds of kids' schedules with less than a day's notice is an egregious act, especially if the change is done without the support of the majority group that is also the most affected, teachers and students. My history teacher taught language arts for the first half of the year before being assigned to teaching history, an entirely different subject. Another example is an often reiterated problem. Because of late buses, dozens of people miss their first period class, which is more often than not a core class, central to learning. When messaged about the solution of putting advisory first in order to avoid the loss of learning time, there was no response from the principal to teachers. This lack of collaboration between the principal, students, and staff leads to chaos and distrust. We are immediately aware of the top-down approach and lack of access to have our voices heard. We feel irrelevant. Leaders, such as a principal, should hold themselves accountable, be transparent, and responsible, because if they don't, why should anyone else? The leader sets the example. This brings me to the last point, the culture of our school. Last week, the principal put the names of students whose behavior had resulted in their detention in the cafeteria for all to see. What kind of culture are these actions encouraging? Where a leader in a position of power utilizes it to humiliate instead of inspire? Where collaboration is unheard of between our principal and our staff, to the point where solutions to problems that affect our learning are ignored. We go to school to learn, but we stay at school because of the culture. How can anyone be proud of what is going on at Washington Middle School?
Next up, we have Paul Hupert, then followed by DJ Yu.
I cede my time to Chris Cruz.
Hello, I'm Chris Crew. I'm a new parent at Dearborn Park and also a new parent in that in June we adopted a 2-year-old girl from China, which is super exciting, and our 5-year-old son was so excited, but he refused to speak to her in Mandarin, even though he knew how to speak in Mandarin. Then in September he started at Dearborn Park, and the next week he started asking her questions in Mandarin. It was really a wonderful, great thing. Dearborn Park is an amazing place. It changes lives. We've only been there a couple months, and it's been really wonderful. But we're also worried, as you've heard, about the future of Dearborn Park. If we don't fix the enrollment system that we have for Dearborn Park, I'm concerned that by the time my daughter can go to Dearborn Park, they won't have a Mandarin bilingual program. Already, students are feeling the effect of the decreases in staff. Next year, I have to explain to my son why his librarian can't be in the library all day, why he can't teach the technology classes that my son really loves. It's going to be even more difficult to explain how, even when we fix the enrollment, we won't be able to bring the librarian back because of some arcane PCP allocations set by the WSS committee. I had to learn a lot to figure out what that means, and I'm still confused, so it's not going to make any sense to him. There are 3 seemingly simple solutions. You've heard them already, but I'm going to tell you again. Please let more kids in off the wait list. That can help us this coming year. Please make sure that Dearborn Park is and stays part of the conversation about reassigning a neighborhood that's 3 blocks away and is being reassigned to a new school anyway. And lastly, please look into creating a geozone like those that are created for North End International Schools, to fill the 25 to 30% of our school that isn't filled by our neighborhood now. Thank you so much.
DJ?
I cede my time to my husband.
Hi, my name is Hugh Kim. I'm a parent of an 8th grader at Washington Middle School, and I'm here to voice my support for the students at the school, as well as the parents that are here with us. It's been a very difficult year, and I think you have all the details of what's been going on at the school. And leaders really, truly set the tone. And unfortunately, we've had to witness that with this current administration and in the White House, and it's just things just fall off the rails. So I think it's very important that you listen and really pay attention. I'm ceding the rest of my time to Emily.
Hi, Emily Wheeler, parent of a 7th grader at Washington Middle, and I did provide the staffing allocation for Washington Middle. And as that shows, and this is available on the website, that from 2017, last year, to this year, we had the same allocation. We were told in the fall by our current principal that there were budget cuts, there weren't enough teachers, and she was going to have to cut foreign language for 7th graders, even though all the other middle schools have foreign language for 7th graders, we do not. And she had to shift teachers around, and she was going to have to move a bunch of things because we didn't have enough staff. This shows that was lies or extremely misleading as far as I can tell. The school was also given in this budget an additional special education person. That wasn't there. Our principal is not a leader. She has caused chaos. We've tried to give her time to find her footing. She hasn't.
I'm sorry, we can't talk about specific individuals. You can talk about systems all
I
you
didn't,
want.
okay.
Thank you.
The leadership at our school is not functioning and needs to be replaced. We need you to do this now and not to wait any longer. It's a complete chaos there. As you heard from many parents, you've gotten many emails. You guys need to pay attention to Washington Middle. You cannot close the achievement gap by ignoring the South End schools. You just can't. It's not going to work. Thank you.
This concludes public testimony this evening. Thank you.
Okay, we are back to board comments. Who would like to go next? Director Burke, please.
Good evening. I want to thank everyone for their comments and sharing with us. It's, as you've heard before, it's a super powerful part of sitting behind the dais is recognizing the impacts, the needs, the hopes, the dreams, the fears of our community, and makes us really thoughtful about how we can make better policy, make better decisions. A couple of things looking back at my last couple of weeks. I had, Director Geary had mentioned, we had a conversation around Policy 2015. This is our instructional materials policy, and we're looking at how to bring that into sort of contemporary times where it's not just about buying a textbook. And the policy was not reflecting that well. So that work continues, and I thank Director Geary for her leadership in helping pull some of those common threads together. Recognizing that work is going on, we also recognize that we can't wait around the Since Time Immemorial program. People think, oh, this is, we're adopting it, it's a course. But it's not a course, it's a framework, it includes materials, it's got professional development components, it's K-12, and it supplements the teaching that happens essentially in many classes, many subjects. And so it's already being used in many of our schools now. It is essentially required by statute, and so what we're going to do is we're going to formally recognize that statute in the work that we do here. I thank President Harris and Director Pinkham for offering to co-sponsor that. So that will be coming forward in the upcoming weeks. Regarding the science adoption process, I had the pleasure of sitting in last week on the elementary and middle school adoption committees, hearing the reports from the field test teachers. Essentially, each elementary and middle school band evaluated 3 programs, and so I got to hear that feedback. It was really informative. Spent the entire day there listening to them, and I'm really grateful that they shared that time with me. And I look forward to further conversations on that. But I'm not going to make any sort of other comments around that until we get closer to our work session on it and a decision. I had a sort of an opportune meeting, which was just a couple days ago, maybe even yesterday. It's all a blur now. I had a work meeting which was held at the Seattle Maritime Academy on an unrelated topic, and it just happened to be the same day that the Seattle Maritime Academy was doing an open house for high school students around the area. So multiple districts were participating and multiple schools were participating. As I was walking out, an entire busload of students from Roosevelt High School came into the Seattle Maritime Academy to learn about the programs they offer, the skill center they offer, and so I think some of the conversations that we might have feel like things aren't happening, but the career navigators that are in the schools are reaching students, helping facilitate field trips. Our skill center principal, Dan Gollesman, is helping to knit that together as well. And so I just wanted, since that was a sort of a serendipity meeting, I wanted to publicly acknowledge that and thank people for making that happen. And then I'm going to editorialize a little bit. Actually, just this morning, again, a work-related story that crosses over into education. Constantly happens. I'm visiting a customer through my professional life that's a multinational company that designs and builds really sophisticated equipment that basically people's lives depend on. And I'm in a meeting with them, and education comes up, as it often does, and we're talking about interns, and they're saying, wow, our interns that we bring in, we put them out in the shop, and they get so excited because they haven't worked with their hands. And it's really sad how the education that they get is all about, used to be hands-on, and now much more computer-focused. People that used to design electric circuits are now designing them on the computer, whereas they used to build them. So I think that's just, it really kind of reaffirmed for me how important our conversations are. We can't prescribe a particular type of learning. We have to recognize balance, and we have to be very intentional about it, because the investments that we make with our capital equipment, with our operating dollars and our adoptions and our words even, determine what resources our kids get. And that's going to carry forward for years and years. So I just wanted to share that story with everyone, because obviously it's a passion of mine. I do not have a community meeting scheduled yet because it's been a little bit crazy, but I look forward to setting something up in the month of April.
Who's next? Director Mack?
Director DeWolf just let me know that there was a shooting in North Seattle that I just heard about, which is devastating and unsettling. This weekend, I got to attend the March for Our Lives town hall that the students who marched last year, it was very large. Many of us participated. We signed a resolution. Just devastating. So my heart goes out to those impacted, and continued resolution from myself and hopefully the rest of the board and our legislator to actually make some movement on gun responsibility. I don't have a community meeting scheduled either. It's been way too crazy. Haven't been able to manage that. We have lots of great board meetings happening. We have our retreat this weekend on racial equity, which I'm also excited to be participating in. I'm also, next week we have our budget conversation, and one of the things that I need to understand better, and I think would be helpful to the whole public to understand better, is the process for adjusting the school budgets as they get developed and then eventually get finalized. It's a question that I am going to be raising at the work session, kind of specifically about what is our process on how the budgets get rolled out, and then what kind of feedback loops do we have for adjusting to enrollment realities or other changes or other needs that come up. Hopefully that will help daylight some, at least process around how we can resolve these challenges. I appreciate folks coming to talk about enrollment issues and boundary issues and so forth, and those are top of mind for me always. We have the student assignment transition plan, which gets adopted in the fall, and in the meantime, we need to be starting to work on the various boundary issues that we need to potentially change or make. And so that work is ongoing. One piece of that is that we are planning to set up an advisory committee to help support that work in our facilities master planning, because there's so much of that going on that needs additional kind of transparency and conversation to ensure that we're making good decisions around things like Dearborn Park and other schools, to ensure that we have robust enrollment and support our students there, and all of that. So thank you for coming and letting us know about the issues there today. And I appreciate the conversations around the focus of the strategic plan. We'll be discussing that more in depth later. But I want to note that we have consistently supported ethnic studies. We have, there's a bill in the legislature that we signed in pro on as well. We adopted it as a course, so it exists as a course, and we need to continue to do more, but I do want to acknowledge that support, and also the support for getting Rainier Beach renovated after all this time. It's on Bex 5, super proud of that. The timeline may not be as ideal as we'd hoped, and we're continuing to look at that. So appreciate those comments coming forward. And I share concerns about what I'm hearing about Washington Middle School. I don't know how to respond, honestly. I think we may have some issues to resolve. So thank you for sharing your concerns. And I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Next up, Director Pinkham. Thank you.
Tachkalawit, good evening. Inim Winikis Somawok, Inim Scott Pinkham. I want to proudly say that I'm Nez Perce, Nibipu, and I think the urban native education lines that comes out here, and sometimes I feel like they have this bad reputation that they're anti-Seattle schools or anti-native education programs here at for the Seattle schools, but they're just trying to push that we see, based upon the school district's data, the need to raise our native student performance. And I support that as well. I support raising all students of performance, especially, again, closing that achievement gap. When I ran for this office, I said that's who we need to focus on, because once we raise close those achievement gaps, everyone benefits. And came here and they had the African American Male Academy to focus on African American males, because they are one of the furthest from equitable justice. But I also need to say that given where we're at on the indigenous lands, all schools across this nation should acknowledge they are on stolen indigenous lands and help support that community. So I want to voice that. That's what I plan to do for my rest of my term here. Not to take away from anybody else, but that's what I feel I got to do. So just want to thank the people that came here and talked and spoke and shared their views and perspectives. There's a lot of things that Seattle Schools does right, and I'm proud to be a board member. Yes, I'm here helping lead, but there's a lot of things we still need to address, and I hope that we can do that. And as the new election year is coming up, you know, who's going to run, who's going to come back? You know, do we need that common voice? You know, okay, so I'll retract that. But we need to keep on moving forward, and I feel like we need to do that by one acknowledging. I spoke to Superintendent Juneau. You know, one thing I see, big thing to do, get our welcome signs, yes, to include an Indigenous language. And she said she's going to work on that, yes. So thank you for doing that. The concerns with Licton Springs, I'm going to reach out, let the PTA community, hey, I want to attend your next meeting to see how we can help you become that Native-focused school or go the direction that you feel will be better for the Native population, all students that you serve, you know, because I want to see that school succeed. So letting them know, I know Blaine Parse, I think she's on their PTA, I'll try to connect with them, but other PTA members or parents of students at Licton Springs, send me an email, let me know when the next meetings are going to be, and I'll do my best to make sure I can attend. My next community meeting, got to put on my reading glasses here, is going to be, where my other side, make sure I get the times right. April 7th from 1 to 2 p.m. That is a Sunday at the Broadview Library. That's my next community meeting, so please attend. Other announcements I want to make here. Unfortunately, the University of Washington Spring Powwow has been canceled. That was originally scheduled April 6th and 7th, but due to not being able to find a proper venue, they had to cancel it. Urban Native Education Alliance continues to have its Clear Sky program on Tuesdays and Thursdays at Rob Eagle staff, Licton Springs, K8, doing cultural activities, tutoring, mentoring for our students. They also sponsor the Native Warriors Athletics program on Thursdays and Sundays. Thursdays at Robert Eagle Staff Middle School Gym, and Sundays either at Bitter Lake Community Center or Broadview Thompson Gym. Come out there and enjoy some physical fitness with some students, other students, and UNEA Clear Sky Good Medicine Conference is coming up. It'll be held at Robert Eagle Staff Middle School April 12th and 13th, so it is during spring break from 11 to 5 p.m. Inviting Native youth ages 10 to 19 or anyone that wants to come out and learn more about the urban Native community, please attend, with keynote speakers including Nikita Oliver and Dr. Katrina Claw. For more information, I'll make sure I get it posted up for people to access, but they do have a number here, 206-941-0338 for more information on the Clear Sky Good Medicine Conference. Katsiaya, thank you.
Thank you. Director Geary or Director Patu? Director Geary, thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for coming out, and as always, thank you to, especially to our students who come and speak. I find my hope in their voices, even though I will admit that it has been very, very difficult to go to Olympia, to see the budgets, to see people coming, and not be able to say, okay, yes, fine, we're going to do it. That's very hard for me. So I generally have my meetings Tuesday mornings at Zoka on Blakely above the University Village. I would welcome anybody to come and hang out with a group of parents who really care a lot about education. Always a couple new people come and share their thoughts, and you can check on Facebook. I will be there next Tuesday, but not over spring break. I want to take a moment. I read the paper every day ever since I ran for public office. I started taking the actual paper, so in spite of the fact that sometimes it is infuriating to read the Seattle Times, I feel like it's really, really important for me to at least flip through every page. And I saw this morning that there was an obituary for Waldo King, the founding father of Seattle's renowned high school jazz program. Died at age 92. It says that he started the first student jazz band programs in Seattle, first at Garfield in 1960, then briefly at Franklin High School, and for more than a decade at Roosevelt High School, from which he retired in 1983. And so I think it's really important that we remember the people who contributed so much to our district and who were created something that is still a point of great pride for our city, something that we come around. The music of Seattle is something we all take pride in. I did, as people have heard, I did a lot of work, and I'm going to talk about the strategic plan now because as soon as our comments are over, the room kind of clears out as we get down to business oftentimes. But I'm going to say a few things about the strategic plan and our focus on African American males, because as I look around this room in the audience, that's not really a demographic that I see here. And that's really hard for me because I see natives. We have 3 natives up here, and so while I appreciate their invisibility, their lack of voice historically, and in the statistics, I see this group of people come week after week and speak up. I see these programs being developed in our schools to meet the needs and create space for their voices. I know Sandpoint Elementary in my district now has a new program for their Native students. I see the comments saying, please bring more of these programs, and I'm going to give huge credit to one woman, Gail Morris, and all the people that work with her, because she's done so much work around that. But there is an intersectionality with African American males in all of these discussions. If you go into a Native gathering, you will see people who appear to be African American, and they are Native. And if you go into the special education rooms, you will see African American kids. But when you see the people coming to advocate from those groups, you won't necessarily see people who appear to be African American within their ranks. And I think when we say that we want people to unapologetically put the needs of our students who are farthest from social justice first, we are asking that every single person within our system ask themselves, where is the intersectionality around this work, and how do we make our community better by focusing on the needs of a group that voice just really isn't heard. And we don't hear their voices in sometimes advocating for our own needs. And we didn't take the time to figure out how their voice could be met in our needs. So I just point that out, that this is really important work. It's not that it's one over the other, but I think that if we can get to a group that is so underrepresented and has such tragic outcomes within our system, that we will find that we are creating space for lots of different voices. So it's not an either or, but it is really a request that everybody look at themselves in this process, in this system of institutional systemic racism, and just figure out what each of our roles has been. And it's not based on the color of our skin. We are all caught in this system. So I say that, it means a lot to me. It's gonna take a lot of hard work, and I wish it was appreciated when I go down to Olympia how hard that work is gonna be. So, and with that, I will stop. Thank you.
Director Patu, please.
I think one of the most enjoyable thing about this job is I have the opportunity to actually to visit schools and be able to watch students at work. This last week, I actually had an opportunity to go to a couple of the elementary schools, and I think it's just very motivating to just sit back and watch students enjoy their learning, and the people that are teaching them enjoy teaching. When I was going through schools, I didn't always have great teachers. But you know, when you watch teachers that really are passionate and really into their work, it's really exciting, because not only they're exciting, but the kids are exciting about learning. And I believe that all our students deserve teachers that are excited about learning and excited about teaching. And so far, the schools that I've been, I was really quite amazed by what the teachers are doing right now in our schools. And hopefully to continue on to visit schools and just be amazed by the work that's going on. Sometimes we don't give teachers credit enough for the work that they do, because we have to remember they have to deal with a lot of kids. And sometimes those kids are not the greatest kids, but at the same time, we have to give them credit for being patient and also are able to teach our students or our children what is it that they need in order for them to carry on to the next level of their life. So for teachers, I say thank you for all the hard work that you do, and continue to inspire our students. There's so much to learn. It's been really, this week has been a very hectic week for me, mainly for the fact because I'm getting ready to leave for Europe, which is a place that I've never been before. And every time I think about it, I just think, oh, is this where I need to go? So I'm blindly going to Europe because my daughter told me to come with her. But I'm hoping that it'll be a new experience for me. And hopefully that when I come back, I'll learn something completely new about that culture, because I think that culture is very important, and it's always amazing to see different cultures. And that's what Seattle Public Schools is all about. It's about all the different cultures that we have in our schools and how we encourage every school to celebrate cultures within their schools, because we have quite amazing students and their culture that they bring to us. I remember when I first came to America, nobody knew where my island was from. They thought I was from a foreign country that they never heard of. And I didn't speak any English, but at the same time, the people that were with me were caring enough to help me to try to understand, even though I didn't understand what they were saying, but yet at the same time, they made an effort. And I think that that's been something that we do quite excellently in a lot of our schools here in Seattle Public Schools. The teachers really make an effort to make sure that their students not only learn, but understands what is it the reason why they're there. And for teachers, I commend them for all the hard work that they do, because a lot of times we have students that we can't deal with, but because they're patients, and the reason why the kids are there is so they can learn. So I say to teachers, thank you for all the good work that you do, and continue to make great progress, because without you, our students wouldn't be where they are today. And I really appreciate being on this board, because it gives me an opportunity to actually to see how education is actually going in what direction. And as a board director, it's amazing to really to be able to have part of what is it that we need our kids to be able to learn, and looking at the people that are teaching our kids. Are they actually giving excellent education to our students? I think for the most part, yes, they are. And hoping that we can continue that work and be able to just to see our kids excel in more ways than one. I'm proud to be on this board and the people that I serve with, because we're all here because our heart's in the right place. We all want to do the right thing. We might not always make the right choice, but I think that this is a place where if you really want to make changes in education, this is where we need to be. So hopefully that I don't make too many mistakes. I've been the longest board director sitting up here, and hopefully I think I got 2 more years left, and then you don't have to see me anymore. But it's been a great opportunity to actually to be part of this board and be able to see this Seattle Public School grow in various directions, giving opportunities to every student that come through those doors. And hopefully, I have 2 more years left, and hopefully those 2 years will be one of my best 2 years that I will actually be able to give to Seattle Public Schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, daughter Monica, if you're listening, take me to Europe. I'm jealous. Last, hopefully not least, a number of thank yous. Thank you to the folks that have been going down to Olympia, that have been writing to Olympia, especially the Student Voices, our PTSA, our Washington Paramount Duty, our staff. Thank you for all the folks that turned out for the legislative town halls over the last 2 weeks. Thank you to my state senator, Joe Nguyen. I was fortunate enough to attend his with a number of teachers from both Highline districts and Seattle School District. I was disappointed that my other 2 legislators didn't show up, but they probably thought that I was coming with my McCleary is in fact fake news. And it hurts my heart, and it certainly hurts my brain that our legislature, who we have been told to wait 4 years until we had a quote-unquote healthy majority, is not delivering. Urban school districts have very different needs than other school districts, and that does not appear to be recognized. Our homeless population, our kids in need, we have a disproportionate percentage of folks. When I tell my fancy litigation lawyer type folks about a $40 million deficit and the numbers of kids needing special attention and the number of homeless children we serve, they go gape-jawed. And I'm like, wait a minute, this is not new news. We've been reporting it. Dahlia Bazaz over here with the Seattle Times has been reporting it. Neil Morton's been reporting it. Folks, wake up and smell the coffee. This is our future. When I tell them that we're talking about half-time librarians, again, gape-jawed. So truly talk to everybody in your professional communities and in your neighborhoods and make them wake up and smell the coffee. Because this meme out there that it's all been solved and you pass the levies, not just one levy, but 2 levies in February, that you pass the Seattle Families Education Preschool Promise Levy, of course we're rolling in money. Well, you know, a couple of years from now, we're still going to have a $90 million deficit. We have not fixed the structural inequity in one of the worst tax systems in this state. And if I'm being too political, take me to PDC jail. Double dog dare ya. Thank you to the Concord community who had their auction last weekend. Great food, great music, great company. That is a Title I school, a language immersion school, and they work awfully darn hard out there in South Park, and I encourage you to go if you ever have the opportunity. Outstanding folks. Director Burke and also Director Geary brought up since time immemorial. I'm an absolute fan of this program. The legislature, Senator John McCoy, put this in place years and years ago. I know that there is concern by staff that we will be putting in board policy by resolution, and if we let the genie out of the bottle, then goodness knows all hell will break loose. But we have waited long enough for this, and I hope that when we bargain with our teachers, we will require professional development for since time immemorial. We have not done a good job on this, and frankly, I'm ashamed of that fact. So game on, let's see what happens. Let's rise it to the top, and hopefully we will work through our issues with 2015. Hopefully we will work through our issues with respect to Amplify Science. If nothing else, we will have honest, straightforward conversation about all these issues, and we'll still love each other at the end of the day. That's who we are, and I'm really proud of that fact. It's a little like family. With respect to the strat plan, I intend to vote for it. Is it perfect? No, it is not. But I do not want the perfect to get in the way of the good. I am far more interested with what we do about it. I am old. I have sat on more boards than I can count. I have helped craft by committee more mission and vision statements than I can count. But I'm a pragmatic person. I'm not an ideologue. That's not who I am. It's not how I'm made. I want to know what we're going to do about this. Are we going to walk our talk? Are we going to have accountability measures at the end of the day? We had a strategic plan, 60 pages, some 65 folks that came together to write the last one. And did we make progress? We did make some progress. Did we make enough progress? Absolutely not. So I'd like to go with the KISS rule and go straight down the middle and walk our talk and call each other out when we're not doing that. And I applaud the folks that come down and testify and send us emails that call us out. I would say, however, that folks that want to throw rocks at our head, you need to back off. It's not okay. And if you want to throw rocks at the heads of administration, that's not okay either, because folks are working hard. And everybody that says the Seattle Public School District is mismanaged, I invite you to wear my high heels. I got a pair of red shiny ones for you. It's not that easy. So give us some space and work with us, if you would. When folks are saying how horribly mismanaged this district is, I emphatically disagree with you. Do we have room for improvement? We absolutely do. But pouring gasoline on the fire so that legislators can push back, that's really not helpful if you're on the same team and you want the same things for our students. And let's remember, it's about students. It's not about adult issues. I am a little fired up because I know folks are working real darn hard. Am I frustrated? Holy smokes, am I frustrated. The dog is so sick of listening to me vent. I want to know about enrollment numbers. I want to know what's going on behind the curtain about the weighted staffing standards. CFO Berge will tell you that I ask a lot of questions, and I do so, as they say, unapologetically. That's my job. But do I appreciate staff's willingness to come to the table and give us the information that we ask for? Absolutely, I do. A couple of other issues, and then I'll shut up and we'll get to the main action here. The student assignment plan we need to be working on yesterday. We have many, many boundaries that need to be addressed. And whatever systemic issues we have to make that happen, we need to deal with those yesterday. We have a new COO in Fred Podesta. I've got a great deal of confidence in him, and I might add, he came to my last community meeting, and I think we opened his eyes up about how things are done in Seattle Public Schools. It was terrific, and I hope that more staff will come. Towards that note, I do not have a meeting planned yet, but they usually occur on the third Saturday from 3 to 5 at a library in West Seattle, and you are at the 50-50 chance of getting lasagna, and it's worth coming for. Again, I have concerns about the transparency and the robustness with which we communicate with our families. We're working on it. It's recognized. A lot of things we as board directors don't get to put out on the street, and it's a real trust exercise, and it's really frustrating because if you know me, I like to talk, and I like to communicate, and I like to collaborate, but I also have to put my fiduciary duty ahead, and frankly, it's very uncomfortable oftentimes. Stay tuned. It's a pleasure, and it's an honor to work with the folks up here. So, action items, C1, adopting a 5-year strategic plan. This came before Executive Committee February 15th for consideration. Motion, please.
With pleasure. I move that the school board adopt the 2019 through 24 strategic plan as attached to the board action report.
Second.
Madam Superintendent, the floor is yours.
so
because
much.
you get to lead the implementation of same.
I do, and I am honored to do so, Madam President. I just think it was really great that we had so many students here this evening, so many who were speaking in their heritage language, and so I would just like to start that way as well. Oki nixuquax nitanaku, amskapi pakani, utskui siksikiaki. That means, hello, my friends and relatives. My Blackfeet name is Blue Cloud Woman. And I just wanted to start that way because I am not fluent in my native language. And that is because of a long, long, long history in this country of oppression and racism in our public education system. Native people were forcibly taken to boarding schools, ripped away from their families, put into schools where they had their culture taken away, their language stamped out of them, where the motto was kill the Indian, save the man. And so as I think about all the oppression and racism that's been in our public education system for the history of this country, and the reasons why I don't know my heritage language, it's why tonight I'm so excited to bring you my recommendation for a targeted 5-year strategic plan to focus our resources, work, and initiatives of this district. This plan reflects what I heard from our community during my listening and learning tour, our January 2019 engagements, what I heard from students loud and clear, what I heard from the board during our work sessions and retreats, and what I heard from staff and cabinet. Unlike prior plans, this year's plan embodies strategic. While our ongoing operational work to provide excellence to all of our students persists, this plan has clarity about what we are trying to accomplish for our historically underserved students and families. And I just want to read from the theory of action. To achieve educational justice, Seattle Public Schools strives to provide safe learning environments, curriculum that incorporates a student's life experiences and culture, and instruction delivered by high-quality, culturally responsive educators. Unfortunately, many students from certain ethnicities have not historically experienced equitable opportunities for all or part of their educational journey, including African and African American, Asian Pacific Islander, and Pacific Islander, Latinx, and Native American students. These students are our priority with an intentional focus on African American males. The draft strategic plan is guided by the principle of targeted universalism. In addition, we believe that an intentional focus on African American males will ultimately benefit all students. We would not have a strong written vision for our district without our dedicated strategic plan committee, which was made up of community members, representatives from our principal corps, SEA, our union, a board representative, and staff. And I want to personally thank Director Gary for being the board representation on the committee. You were the right pick, and thank you for being so strong throughout that process. If there are any other committee members in the room, I just thank you as well, and make sure that, thank you so much for your work. I also want to thank our community for offering feedback throughout this process, including my listening and learning tour, and again during the January 2019 engagement on our draft. Thank you to the board for the conversation at the last board meeting and the robust conversations we have had throughout this process, in particular at 2 board work sessions and 2 board retreats. In response to the discussion at the last board meeting, one change has been made since introduction. The footnote within the high quality instruction and learning experience priority defining high quality instruction was updated to add the language with consistent and appropriate feedback. We know that there's a lot more work to be done to implement this plan. There are work plans, data dives, information gathering, community engagement, SMART goals, et cetera, et cetera. And we have to do that implementation within our current budget situation, so that's going to be a big lift. But I know that this community and our district is full of smart, resourceful, creative people that can make sure we are working to move the needle on student achievement and student-centered decision-making. Seattle Public Schools has focused on racial equity over the past few years. It's one of the things that drew me to this job. But never has it been so explicit in our primary guiding document. I'm proud the board will approve this aspirational plan tonight, and I look forward to the hard work it will take to make it a reality. I see this plan as a courageous statement to our community, to our families, and most of all, to our students. This plan is the reason you hired me. It's the reason I chose to come to Seattle. Working together with our community, our families and students, we, Seattle Public School staff and the board, are setting our charge for the next 5 years. We are telling our community that we are committed to strive for excellence for all of our students and making sure that excellence reaches each of our students, particularly those who are furthest from educational justice. I tell this story a lot, and we do it at the beginning of every board meeting. We stand up and give the Pledge of Allegiance. And at the end of the pledge are the words, "and justice for all." And when I sit down, I whisper the word to myself, someday. Someday we will have it. The direction this plan sets will help inch us closer to that ideal. And if we do our work correctly and we do it together as a team, we will be able to stand and say the phrase at the end of that pledge with the word today. And so I look forward to working with all of you in this room. I look forward to the staff. I look forward to the work with the board, the heavy lift that we're going to have to make. I ask this board to stay strong. I ask you to be considerate of the hard work of the committee, our community partners, and the voices of our students, and pass this plan as is. And know that we will continue our focus on those students who are furthest from educational justice, and we will start that work with African American males. Thank you.
Okay, questions, comments, concerns from my colleague? Who would like to speak? Director DeWolf, please.
Thank you. I also just wanted to thank both Director Geary and the incredible volunteers that sat on this committee for the strategic plan. I have only done one other in my non-school board life, and recognize the immense amount of work and commitment to reckoning with certain things that strategic plans invite us to do. Our country was founded on indigenous invisibility and anti-black racism. And while we can always do more for our most underserved students, I believe that this strategic plan gets us closer to educational justice for all of our students. Now, what we're going to do with this strategic plan is we're going to reckon with the inherent racism that is built into the DNA of our public education system. But now I have a charge for our city, for our neighbors, for our parents, for voters, for families, and for educators. We're showing up in this way to reckon with our racism. We are inviting you to join us in our efforts and reckon with our collective racism as well. It's going to take all of us to undo institutional racism. Please show up, and we're inviting you to join us. I'm really excited to vote for this. I know it's taken a ton of work, but I couldn't be more proud of really focusing on racial equity and the students that are most underserved by our system. So thank you for the incredible work. And I know we're going to be back here the next day, putting in the time to make sure we're implementing that well. So thank you for your work.
Director Mack.
Strategic plan, mission, visioning, it is a lot of process and a lot of work, and a lot of folks put their input into this strategic plan. And I too want to thank everyone for that process and for the intentional focus of the strategic plan. It is more narrow than some folks may like, and we are making an intentional decision to be more narrowly focused, to do that hard work. I do think that having that narrow focus will improve things for everyone across the district, because every time there's an issue or a shortfall, every time in every system, the people that are most disadvantaged are always the ones that are most harmed. And so if we take that lens in our decision making in the future and look at what are we doing and who is it impacting, and ensuring that we are focusing our efforts on improving and closing the opportunity gap, then we can only do better. With regards to the comments around the concerns around the operational, we got a number of comments and concerns that the operational priority was not as focused, now that it's focused primarily on district and doesn't really reflect a focus on the schools. And I'll say the same thing I just said about that intentional focus. I put a lot of thought into this. And part of the reason why I came to being a school board director was because of our challenges around our district systems and wanting to help impact that. Because again, in those systems, who gets most impacted? It's most disadvantaged students. And so I think that our intentional focus around our district operational systems, it will and needs to translate into what's happening directly at schools. We need to focus on our central office and our overarching systems and get better there. So I understand the criticism and concern around it, but I'm also supportive of the way that we have landed in the language around this. And I want to point out that the second goal under this talks about operational functions will improve communication to school leaders, family, and students. And that's one of the measures is our student awareness family surveys. So there is a feedback loop for us to be seeing how it is that, how are we actually impacting at the school level? Which leads me into the other kind of question that's been mentioned is the implementation plan. There's some information in the bar about the timeline for that. I was curious to get a little bit more clarity around the process that we're going to go through around the specific implementation process. What's the board's role in that? Are we going to be helping to approve KPIs, or do we have any clarity around that? Because I feel like that's where the rubber meets the road, and how do we ensure that the initiatives that we are starting are actually reflecting the strategic plan. So that's kind of the question that I'd like to raise. I'm wondering, is it possible for Aaron to speak to that, or Denise, what are your thoughts?
There's a lot, Director Mack, there's a lot of work to be done. Like I mentioned, there will be a process put into place, and of course that work will be done collaboratively with the board. I think there's a definite thing. And then out of that, you have great talking points around it. Will flow different department kind of plans and the work that actually has to be done. But I just had a visit with Director Burke, and you had some great words around that.
I'm happy to go there if that's a tag.
Does that
But I wanna
feel
make
as
sure.
though your, hang on, does that feel as though your question has been acknowledged and/or?
Yes, actually it does, because I mean, I would, the commitment has been made, and I appreciate that, and I understand that we're going to kind of work through it as to how it plays out. So hearing the ideas that the collaboration's going on with Director Burke about his ideas for how that can happen will be really helpful, and so I appreciate that.
Everyone's
No, my
ideas.
ideas, it's everyone's ideas.
Yes, excellent, excellent. And so I do
Yeah,
think that's
just
very
try
responsive.
shutting one of these board directors up. Good luck.
Is that a dare?
And
Of
that was all that I'd be happy
Triple
to.
dog.
I'd be happy to hear from Director Burke, because that concludes the comments and statements I wanted to make.
The floor is yours, Director Burke.
Thank you. I'll weave that in. I had a couple of points that I wanted to make. That, you know, I've been at some level a passenger on this journey, and I'm grateful to those that have driven the train, have been on the train the entire time, have shaped the whole thing. But there have been some really great check-ins at the beginning, where we, as a board and through work sessions, helped set some key principles, multiple check-ins, even down to helping work through some of the language concerns at the end. So while I haven't been as involved in the process as my colleague Director Geary and many of the folks on the committee that I'm super, super grateful for, I feel like where I started about, wow, I don't see myself in this plan. I don't see some of the things that I'm passionate about in this plan. Along that journey, I've been learning. And I've been learning and internalizing what focusing on the students farthest from educational justice really means. And I realize, wait, I am in that. Everybody's in that. We're just doing it through the vehicle of those students farthest from educational justice. And we've said that as words, but it took me some time, and I just want to be transparent about that. It took me some time to really take that and let it sink into my heart. So not being named, explicitly named in the strategic plan, my belief and what I hope that we will continue to articulate is it does not mean lesser than. It does not mean forgotten. It does not mean marginalized. So that's something that's really important to me. One of the other concerns that I've heard is around high quality. And since I'm from an engineering and manufacturing background, the concept of quality is very sort of sacred to me. And the challenge around high quality is that the pure definition of quality is essentially how it compares to an expectation. And our families have different expectations. We have different expectations. And so when we talk about high quality, my expectation for my family, for my student, for what the system can deliver, could be completely different from another person's family. I've spoken to parents who say, my kid used to go to a school and they would run away. And now they're in a school that loves them and they're happy to be there and they'll stay. And I say, that's amazing. But you know what? We want to go above that expectation. We don't want that to be our minimum expectation. So I think that the concept of high expectations really comes down to continuous improvement, growth, and communication around what are your expectations? Are we meeting them? Are we exceeding them? Because every time we meet expectations, people will say, well, I expect a little more. I expect a little more. Because that's human nature. That's what all of us do. Whenever something becomes the norm, we'd like to see what's next. So I'm really conscious about high quality, and we'll continue to encourage the district to use systemic measures around quality as we go through implementation. So around implementation, I was having a conversation with some folks on cabinet about this, and we were likening it to an educational project. As, oh, this is like a capstone project. Like, wait, no, it's not a capstone. It's more of a midterm, because really the capstone is student graduation, post-secondary success. This is just a midterm. There's a lot of work left to do in the second semester here, and so that's where we start thinking about what comes next. And in the bar, Section 12 has a set of categories with nominal date ranges that staff has looked at and said, this is what we think we can do within our capacity. And for the board's perspective, and the public as well, there's some really specific touch points that I want to highlight. Policy A02, which is performance management. And so this is a document that we started in, people are laughing. I know, I told you I'd go there. That's what we started in C&I committee and exec, and we essentially said, oh, this is something that we need the strategic plan for. We can use the strategic plan as an implementation vehicle through policy A02. That's where the board can collaborate using a policy vehicle. We have a superintendent evaluation. We heard our superintendent passionate about this issue, and she has said, I want to be evaluated on the strategic plan. She said that. She's nodding. So that's kind of a big deal. And then we have district SMART goals, or kind of district level goals that are board approved, that are collaborative, that are kind of the big initiatives. There'll be tons of department level and staff level initiatives below that are going to help make this happen. But that's another place where we as a board and community with outreach and really thoughtful processes can put that in place. So I'm really excited about where our midterm is, and I plan to support it because I think we did a really nice job on it, and I'm grateful to those who did. So thank you again.
Other board comments, concerns? Director Pinkham.
Thank you. I asked you in the report, Superintendent, as we look at this, we focus on African American male, that we be sure that it is going to include, we're not going to leave anybody behind, and especially Native American students. So I would like to know a little bit more about that. How are we going to make sure we are, as we focus on the African American males, which is good, how is that going to serve the other students that are farthest from educational justice? I think that may help me out to say, okay, I do see the vision, but I got some people in the community that I don't think they're quite clear on it. But if we can definitely just say it, these are what we're going to do, and this is how it's going to help these other communities. It may help clarify some things. There may be some, I don't know if it's Scribner error, it just says Native students. Did we need to put Native American students in it? Was that the intention? And part of the goal where we say students furthest from educational justice, including, and then it just says Native students, but Superintendent Juneau read it Native American students. Do we need to make that adjustment? Do people know what Native, if they just said Native students versus Native American students? We say African and African American students. I would like to see that it does say yes, Native American students, because there could be a lot of people say, I'm Native. I'm Native to Seattle. I'm Native to the United States.
In consensus up here on the board, Mr. General Counsel, that's a Scrivener's edition, is that correct, sir? Yes. Thank you.
And other things that we talk about, students of focus, and then we use another language, students of color. Can I get clarity on that? That are our students of color the students of focus?
Where are the students of focus?
Students of color farthest from.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I was sick when this was introduced. I wasn't here at the meeting. Part of what you read to achieve educational justice as it goes through, it says, unfortunately, many students from certain ethnicities have not historically experienced equitable opportunities for all are part of their educational journey, and then it includes. And then as we go down, it just says, students of color. Is it intentional that the students of color are those ethnicities that we listed above?
Yes. It's the same.
Yes. Okay. So I just want to make sure that that gets clarified.
Right. Students of color furthest from educational justice is that list.
Is that. Okay. So, and I think, I talked to Chief, I can mix it up, Aaron Bennett-Colby, and I asked you, that's one thing I want to make sure that was clear, how can we show that for the Native community that's contacted me, that Native communities are not being left behind, are not forgotten in this document. So if there's anything that someone can share that can help assure, and I think everyone up here, I believe, if I take your word that yes, Native Americans are not going to be forgotten in the strategic plan. No student of color, no students even not of color are going to be forgotten. But we're going to intentionally work with African American males and bring up everyone along with it. If I can get everyone to say, yes, Scott, that's our intention. Native students, Hispanic students, Latinx students, Asian Pacific Islander students, the list goes on. Students, Muslim students, students from different backgrounds. We're going to do that.
Yep, that's the intent.
That's the intent. Thank you. Aaron, is there anyone that can help support maybe from the board?
That is the intent. You read it, I think, throughout. I think this is, it's clear. What I read in the theory of action is clear. We talked a lot at the board retreats around what targeted universalism is, and it really is making sure that we are looking at ourselves as a district, and we are changing our structures and the way that we do business to best meet the needs of a targeted group, African American males. In doing so, we are helping to change the structures that will best help all students of color who are furthest from justice, and by doing that, we will be helping all students in our system. That's the theory, that's the principle, that's what's weaved, I think, throughout this entire plan. I know that sometimes it's difficult not to see yourself explicitly named, but I believe that if we do right by African American males in this district, we are going to be doing right by all students of color. and by all students.
Yeah, so thank you for that. And so again, I'm going to really support there's a community that I'm going to be responsible to, so I'm going to make sure that remind everyone, oh, hey, let's not forget our Native American students. Let's not forget our Muslim students and any students that may sometimes fall through the cracks. I'm going to do my best to make sure that their voices are heard.
And I would just say, I mean, you heard earlier that there are programs for Native students, which we are really, really, really proud of in Seattle Public Schools, and the work of Gail Morris, the Native program, the federal funds that come into our district that are then dispersed out for assistance, the Parent Advisory Council of the Indian, for the PAC money to help guide and advise us in a way. And just a reminder that African American males don't come with any money, right? That there aren't set aside funds for African American males like there are Native money. And so we're happy that we're able to have those funds to at least build a nominal system to support Native students, and we have a really good base as a result of that to build upon and to learn from for other students.
Director Geary.
Oh, I think I've said enough, other than to say I want to give a huge thanks to Erin Bennett for being my partner in this work, keeping me focused, encouraging me to circle around with different communities and different members. So thank you. Thank you to everybody who participated on the steering committee. We've said it before, but there were so many really good conversations about what these words mean, what it's going to take. And at the end of the day, we're not going to see a change unless we see a culture change. And this is what is meant by the strategic plan. It is a culture change that if we can change the culture within our building for our African American males, it will be changed for our other students of color farthest from educational justice. It would have to be. That is the hope. It is certainly not anybody's goal that we're looking at a different group 5 years from now and a different group 5 years from now. The group is that we change the eyes and hearts and minds of the people within this institution and the people of this city so that every student is met with belief and expectation, no matter how they identify, their culture, whether they want to spend time in their culture, giving them the strength and courage to go out into other cultures because they know that that is just the new institutional norm. So, we have to start somewhere, and it's going to be inches because it is so deeply ingrained. But it is a start, and it's one I hope that is emulated by other school districts and other agencies in our city. Thank
Director
you,
Patu?
everybody.
Did you wish to speak on this issue?
Strategic plan. Yes, I do, actually. I just want to say that it's a long time waiting for this to happen. As a longtime board director, this really has been an issue that's been ongoing, and hoping that someday that we can be able to really come down to and realize how important this is for our particular African American male. And so just hearing that and being able to say we're finally moving forward, I think it's a plus for this board, and actually realizing that we're making changes that has needed to be changed for many, many years. So thank you for that change that we're making and moving forward, and thank you to Superintendent for actually making that a priority. We're going to continue on to do bigger and greater things for all our kids. Thank you.
Okay, last but not least, I've already indicated that I will be voting for this. I had my comments this evening about rock throwing to folks that are working really hard, and I implore communities that are not happy with this to get over it and to help us. I am angry about people that seek to divide us, because we're on the same boat. And this strategic plan and targeted universalism does not mean that we will continue to polarize highly capable or other labeled groups of children. Again, the word children needs to be uppermost. The labeling that goes on, the divisiveness that goes on is born of privilege. And I have to tell you, prior to joining this board, I never thought of myself as privileged. And I have learned a great deal, sometimes very painfully. These are children we're talking about. If you're not happy, join the team. Help us give every student in our district a good education. Volunteer. Triple dog dare your legislators to spend 3 consecutive days in your classroom. Make it real. It is not us's and them's, it's and. It's the driver here, folks. And with that note, roll call, please.
Director Burke,
Aye.
Director DeWolf,
Aye.
Director Geary,
Aye.
Director Mack,
Aye.
Director Patu,
Aye.
Director Pinkham,
Oh, aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
This motion is passed unanimously.
Now the really hard work begins. C2, BTA 3, award construction contract K5106, bid number B12839 to Western Ventures Construction for the John Muir Geothermal Wells Project. This came before Ops February 7th for consideration. Motion, please.
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute construction contract K5106 with Western Ventures Construction in the amount of $1,703,500, including base bid plus alternate number 1 and alternate number 3, plus Washington state sales tax, with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract.
Second.
COO Podesta, you want to tee this one up quickly? And we have a time check of 7:46 and a whole lot of intro items that are yours.
Sure. Chief Operations Officer Fred Podesta, we talked about this in a certain amount of detail at intro. This is to dig 80 geothermal wells for a new efficient HVAC system at John Muir Elementary. This is the BTA 3 project. This is the 6th project like this we've done, and I think we're ready to go.
And this is the one that was amended, given a
Yes,
eagle-eyed constituent.
Thank you. There is a minor change on the second page in the section labeled alternatives. There was an error. It made reference to seismic work and should have, again, talked about digging geothermal wells.
And it was my version of magic, seeing you
Yes.
respond in 5 minutes.
There you go.
Director Mack, did you have something to add, madam?
No, I was just going to note that and appreciation to folks who kind of catch these things. We have so many construction bars that come through, and details do matter. So thank you, and for responding so quickly to get it updated. And I don't think there's any remaining issues. If anyone has any other questions, I think we've
Comments,
handled
questions,
everything.
concerns from my colleagues? Seeing none, roll call, please.
Director Patu,
Aye.
Director DeWolf,
Aye.
Director Geary, Director Patu, Mack,
Aye.
Director Burke,
Aye.
Director Pinkham,
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
This motion is passed unanimously.
C3, BEX 4, award construction contract P5123, bid number B09813 to CDX Construction Services, Inc. for the Catherine Blaine Seismic Improvements project came before Ops February 7th for. Motion, please.
I move that the school board authorize the superintendent to execute construction contract P5123 with CDK Construction Services, Inc. in the amount of $629,000, including base bid plus Washington State sales tax, with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract.
Second.
Questions, comments, concerns from my colleagues? We spoke about this in intro. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Director Burke,
Aye.
Director DeWolf,
Aye.
Director Carey,
Aye.
Director Mack, Director Patu,
Aye.
Director Pinkham,
Aye.
Director Harris.
Aye.
This motion is passed unanimously.
Okay. D, we're on introduction items. We have 8 this evening. This is a time check. We are at 7:50. While the superintendent is out of the room, I think we can give her an assignment or 2 or 3. That was a joke. Hello. Number 1. I'm looking at asking for a break. We will take a 10-minute break. Please be back here at 8:01. Thank you. Intro. Approval of Families Education, Preschool, and Promise Levy Partnership Agreement and Funding for Summer Learning 2019 and 2019-2020 school year. Executive Committee, March 20th for consideration. Approval of this item would authorize the superintendent to execute a partnership agreement with the City of Seattle and to accept grant funds totaling $23,998,804 from the City of Seattle's Family Education, Preschool, and Promise Levy, FEP, for the Seattle Preschool Program, Seattle Promise Program, Summer Learning, Elementary, Middle, and High School Innovation, Middle School Linkage, and Culturally Responsive Programming with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to accept the grant funds. Director Mack, could you lead us off, because you sent a very thoughtful email to your colleagues today, and I'd appreciate hearing that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It feels really quiet in here. Did the fans go off or something? Anyway, so I'm grateful to be part of the LOC, and having read through the entire implementation plan document, which, just for clarification for folks that understand process or don't understand, but I just want to clarify what the whole process is around the city's levy. Thank you so much for it in general and for us being a part of it. It's very exciting. The city has a process of approving the implementation plan, which they're currently in process of doing at their city council level, and they had a committee meeting today. That implementation plan is 100 and some odd pages long and details all of the levy, which is not just Seattle Public Schools related pieces, but the entire levy. For us, we have this partnership agreement for the pieces that are related to Seattle Public Schools. And it's a board-approved document that lays out the foundation of what we're doing. And so that's what this document is. And when I was reading through it, I was really grateful for seeing the hard work that went into it to resolve a lot of the issues that I've been hearing along the way, and that there's been lots of great negotiation between the city and the district to resolve those issues. And in the email I sent today, I didn't get to say the thank you, or I could have, but I didn't. I didn't take the opportunity. But I do want to say thank you, because I noticed there were a lot of great points and a lot of good work going into that. I raised a number of overarching concerns and kind of technical issues that I'm hoping that we can work through, and I've talked with staff, and it sounds like there's resolution to those things, and there may be a little bit of back and forth negotiation, but that we can work through those issues. One of the primary ones was a clause around that there would be amendments made without the council or district approval, and I think that was the intention behind that was something different. would it be appropriate to ask Mr. Nielsen to come and speak to that point?
Mr. Nielsen and Mr. Chappelle both.
Yeah. And then the corollary to that is there's a clause around the amendment to the partnership agreement in general, but then clarification around the additional agreements that will be adopted and how those, what the process is and what the approval process is for those. Those were the one first question I had.
So good evening, Stephen Nielsen, Deputy Superintendent, and
Dwayne Chappelle, Director of Education and Early Learning, with our amazing staff, our Finance Director, Tim Wolf, and Marissa Roussel, our Levy Coordinator.
that is a small representation of a number of people. The same goes for our staff. And for this, before I directly address your question, Director Mack, I want to thank the City of Seattle. I want to thank the Seattle voters on behalf of our students for the extraordinary support that we have. This is a very unique opportunity for us in our city, and it provides opportunity for our students and families, something that others do not enjoy or even have a dream possibility that we have before you tonight. Specific to Director Mack's question, the partnership agreement has a number of sections, and there's section 3 in it, which is located in the board action report, and it discusses the detail of the intent, and I will say what our intent from Seattle Public School staff is that the intent is that any minor operational changes could be done without having to go back to the council and this board. That is the intent as we are interpreting it. As you had earlier this evening, you had discussion around intent, so I will say that is our intent. That said, I will allow Mr. Chappelle to continue that discussion. So.
Yes, that's exactly what the intent is for that section right there. But we also, one thing Mr. Nielsen didn't mention that he alluded to, that we actually have been, we started this back like in September of last year, and we've really made some great progress. And ideally, the partnership agreement, kind of going to what you were just talking about, the implementation plan is like 159 pages. So the partnership agreement is really like a high-level overview that folks who don't love policy like we all do could read and interpret. So that's just where we are with that.
So I have a question to follow up. Does that mean that our city attorney will put this in a legal opinion, a written legal opinion, unlike the charter school funding?
So I don't know if that's a rhetorical question or not.
It's not a rhetorical question. It's an absolute, serious question.
So for this piece right here, the reality is if whatever changes we make to the partnership agreement, we have been working with district's attorney and city's attorney, district staff and city staff to really come up and tweak the language that we want in there. So whatever changes we do make to it, we'll definitely have to go back through that process.
I didn't get an answer to my question, and I'm really not being rhetorical.
Right.
I'm a litigator by trade. I'm a risk manager by trade. There have been times when governmental entities have disagreed. Now, do I appreciate the voters? Do I appreciate you? Do I appreciate your staff? All of those things. However, if this agreement turns to peanut butter, do we have a written legal opinion from the city attorney's office that protects the 53,000 kids in our school district?
I would, without answering it like a yes or no question, part of me want to say yes because our attorneys have been working on this partnership agreement, like I said, since September. So if you want to interpret it that way, then yes, that is. But I can go back and be specific to find the information like where it is a legal opinion about that. But I want to be clear. District Attorney Ronald Boyd, I'm looking at Noel, but I know it's been Ronald Boyd, has been part of this since September. And we've had our city's attorney as well have been part of this partnership agreement since September as well. So if that answers your question, then I would say yes.
To be continued. Other comments, questions, concerns? Director Burke, then Director Geary.
I just want to be supportive of the concern that that Director Mack brought up, when I looked at that as well, the language in there looks pretty wide open to the point where, you know, without this context that we're having in our conversation, it could be interpreted as this document could be rewritten without reapproval.
Okay.
That was sort of my interpretation from reading it, and that sort of gives me pause. You know, we've got some language in our board action reports that end with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent. So there's emphasis on minor. It essentially states exactly what I heard from you in that intent. And so I just thought, well, we have some language around that we're accustomed to, and then this one seemed pretty broad, so that was my concern.
Would it be our, I mean, just a recommendation is that maybe we can just take this back, we, like us, could take it back and retweak and just work with our work group to get the language to what it needs to be, so when this takes action in a couple of weeks, I think so we can be in a better place.
I like that. Director Geary, please.
I have a few questions about just what the discussion has been on a few topics. One, I do see that there's the list of records and that it's guided by FERPA. Has there been any, you know, there's an accountability of collecting and maintaining the law, but if the law is inadvertently broken, has there been discussion about who bears, how the risk will be shifted around those types of activities and how that's being worked out?
I will speak to the Seattle school side. So we will attend to FERPA requirements as we're looking at the release of data, and will not be prone or doing any action that would violate any of those. It's possible it could be done unattendedly, but certainly not on purpose. And so therefore, we would curtail risk to that level before it got to the point. And then once the information goes outside our door to others, then they would own part of the liability. I'm not adding to something that perhaps General Counsel could help
I want to know what the discussion is around that. It seems huge because we have a lot of partners and we're having a lot of community partners and we're sharing, it says here we're going to share our information back and forth. I just want to have a better understanding of that.
Good evening, Noel Treat, Chief Legal Counsel. I wasn't in these negotiations, so I can't answer the question as to what was discussed, but what I can tell you is that in our, we do have a number of data sharing agreements every year for different research and other types of educational programs. And we would have a similar agreement here. It meets all the technical requirements of FERPA, but essentially all the parties that are signatories to that agreement, they have to be signatories to receive FERPA-protected data first and foremost, and then they would be obligated to comply with those obligations, or the breaching party. So for instance, in this case, if we gave the data to the city and the city didn't comply with our data sharing agreement, it would be the city as the breaching party that would face any potential liability.
Okay, and that will be included?
Yes.
Okay. There's nowhere in here that I see, we're partnering and we're doing a lot of designing around K through 12. But is there anywhere in here that just acknowledges that SPS as the educational institution has some level of the ownership of the expertise around education?
The partnership agreement does not speak to that. I can say that in our work with the city, that there is a understanding, at least from my perspective, that the city deal staff knows that we are the educators and we are charged with free education for all of our students. And to that end, we've got a good relationship with them.
It's my understanding that some of the money will be going out to community-based organizations who will be then coming back into our buildings, and I see some potential for conflict, and I'm just wondering if there is a conflict as to the use. Will there be something that says Seattle Public Schools is the one who gets to have the final shaping in line with the missions or the intent of the money, but we are the education experts?
It's a very good question. There are those in this room that know more of this than I, so if someone would like to step up and add to that, that's fine. I would say that one of the things that we've talked with city staff about as we're implementing with CBO resources is to make sure that the schools, principals, the school leaders, whomever, are aligned with the work, and that this isn't a congratulations, we're here to do something that is outside of our strategic plan that you just approved. So we want that alignment, and we want to make sure that we're doing something that's value added, not taking us sideways to a different direction that may be wonderful, but not necessarily on the student's best interest or in our own.
I come in at a time when there was stories of the Alliance for Education, RIFs, city RIFs, and it seems to come down to these kinds of questions, these kinds of conflicts. Who owns the expertise around what needs to be done with our students?
This isn't a complete answer, I don't think, to the question you're asking, but one part of it is when you asked about CBOs in our schools, remember, even if they're funded by the city or feds or the state, we control whether or not a CBO gets access to a school. So we do have a gatekeeper role in that capacity as well. So that's another aspect of this.
Well, once they're in and we know how resources come in and we establish something within our school and then a conflict develops, it's not as easy as saying you're out. It's how are these conflicts? Is there something that's going to be built in that will give us ownership over the educational piece of the decision making?
So one of the aspects,
Or, should there be? I think there should be. I am going to say my board thinks there should be, and they can speak differently, but that is my understanding of our board. So has there been discussions around this? And if not, when are they going to happen? And how is it going to be resolved so we don't end up with a huge tangle in the future that leaves everybody feeling unheard, misaligned, burned?
yes, excellent point. And the service level agreements that will be a piece of this work will have key performance indicators, KPIs, and those will be established ahead of time. And those, again, will be aligned with the strategic plan, with the purpose of the Family and Education Partnership, FEPP issue itself. So all of the effort will be to avoid something happening after the fact and laying it out so the expectations are clear and accountability is clear, and therefore the outcomes are clear.
I guess I'd like to see something under the K through 5 educational piece that just says it. Says that, I don't know exactly how it's worded or what it is, but something, I'm from administrative law, and at some point as an administrative law judge, there was deference in a decision making. They didn't tell us how to rule, but there was a certain amount of deference you gave to the agency whose work you were reviewing. And so it wasn't a hard, bright line or you win, you don't win. But in those really tight cases, and I'd like to see some deference around education here in this agreement, maybe not under the health piece, that's not where we are known to be the experts, but the K through 12 educational piece, I'd like to see some deference around our so please think about that and see if we can do that.
Okay.
Let me move on. I'd like to also talk about the parent partnering with families and communities. This doesn't sound like we're partnering with families and communities. It sounds like we're partnering with community, cultural, and language-based organizations. Maximize partnerships with all these people and assure access to a diversity of resources that strengthen families and communities. But I would think we'd want to also maximize partnerships with school-based, community, cultural, school-based organizations, parent-based organizations. If we're really trying to get to families and parents, then it seems like we should be including the organizations that see their work centered around families and parents as well, if we're really going to partner with families, so we get away from we're doing things for people as opposed to getting to the place where we're doing it with them. And that language in the partnering with families and communities sounds very much like a room of people who work for organizations talking about what's best for families with no assurance that there's even one family of Seattle Public Schools or the programs that they're talking about there. So I'd like to see something in terms of Section 11 that actually talks about organizations that we know are centered around families and school-based families. And those are my comments. Thanks.
Okay, Director DeWolf, then Director Burke, no? Director DeWolf, please.
Yeah, I just want to piggyback a little bit off Director Geary, because I think that was one of the things I had had a conversation with, I can't remember who, but there's a policy particularly for school leaders that, given some of their funding decisions they get to make, will oftentimes work with the community organization. They'll get some funding through, for example, FEP, and then that organization will apply and kind of outline the things they're going to do, and it almost directs what's happening in the schools by way of their application for that thing. And I think that was, and I think, James, I see you over there. I know that there's a policy that has to do with, and maybe I'm calling you out too soon, and I apologize.
So what I'll do before James come up and speak is just talk a little bit about that. We are, so we have these work groups set up. We have a K-5 work group and a post-secondary work group and a six through a secondary work group. We have 3 of them in a promise work group. And so within what we're doing now is looking at processes to speak specifically to what you were just talking about, Director DeWolf, about when community-based organizations apply for FEP funding. What we do within FEP is we make sure that there is alignment between central office and school building to make sure that, like, the strategic plan and the goals that are going to be focused on specifically around expanded learning is in alignment within the school. And there has to be a mutual agreement. We don't just give CBOs funding and ask them to go, find a school to partner. And I also want to speak and just kind of go back one other comment that you mentioned, Director Geary, that sentence you were focusing on is specifically, that's from the ordinance. But this information, we are taking notes. We'll take it back to the work group that we have, and we'll see what we can do to address these.
I just meant that the folks that are applying, I would hope that they're working with the school leaders before they apply, right? Don't just, it's sometimes organizations, there's a nonprofit industrial complex, we all have to bring in our revenue. Sorry, I'm just saying. And so they direct what they're going to do in that school without consulting with that school. And I think that is one of the things that, at least that's what I was picking up from, and I've had a little bit of concern about, to make sure that, particularly now that we passed a strategic plan, making sure that the educational institution is directing what their needs are, and not in a community organization saying, here's the things we want to do, can we somehow make sure they fit?
And so historically, that's what we've done. We made sure that it's aligned with the school and the vision and everything. Now that we have this new strategic plan, we'll be working to make sure that those that are partnering are going to be aligned and centered to what the mission and vision is of the school.
Director Burke, then Director Mack.
Clarification question, which my brain thinks it might remember from a previous conversation around data sharing, and then a question on Section 13 facilities. So regarding data sharing, my understanding is that the data sharing is not, there will not be student identifiable data shared with the city. Essentially, it passes through to CBOs, and the city data is aggregate, non-student identifiable. And I just wanted to confirm that, and if that understanding is correct and appropriate.
So currently, DEAL does serve as an intermediate, so they do get that information right now. But our goal is to build a system in the next year or so to kind of take DEAL out of that role of having to gather the information and then direct it back to the schools. We want to be in a position where CBOs are working directly with the school leaders to be able to get the data and do the assessment of the programs at the school level. The data that DEAL, I'm sure, would love to be able to use is just the data that to how is a school doing, how's a global community doing with the investments at their schools. And we have some other stuff on the preschool side where we actually do want to get more detailed information from them. So getting to a de-identifiable universe may be challenging, but we have to work it through, and there's a commitment to work that through as a team.
Great, thanks for that clarification. So it sounds like not yet. Section 13 facilities is very concise, but I was wondering if we have a lot of existing collaboration with the city around facilities, whether it's the joint use agreement, whether it's the MOU that we have in place. Is that something that is appropriate to include in here, essentially building on the shoulders of giants?
Excellent question. and again, I'm recalling, maybe it's a Scribner's error. In section 13, it says policy singular. I suggest that it's policies and procedures and agreements, because it gets exactly to that point. The intent was to cover any obligations, any of the board policies, any of our work that we have underway already, that this agreement would be aligned with them rather than trying to list every single one that we may or may not miss.
Mac?
I really appreciate and underscore the other comments and concerns that have been brought forward, and appreciate the one around facilities. And to drive that home, the language here is a little confusing on the facilities section, because it seems to be referencing make space available for staff. And so, and then it doesn't really talk about the preschool spaces or the planning around that. I mean, I think a little bit of attention to that section might be helpful to clarify. And if it's not appropriate to put the actual partnership agreement reference in there, make sure that some language is to existing agreements and that kind of thing, and to clarify around, the collaboration on the planning. Just really would like to make sure, stand on the shoulder of giants. We already have agreements in place. We have processes that maybe we need to make more robust, but we don't want to reinvent the wheel, and we do want to reflect back on our existing agreements. Which leads me to the other kind of global question around agreements. Because as I'm looking at this whole document, it's an agreement, and then we have several agreements that are coming later. And what it sounded like was the data sharing agreement was something that we've already developed and use, and is not a board-approved document, which, I don't know if anyone else feels strongly about that, but I think the clarity of the process in the agreement section of this is, going to be negotiated by staff, and how, just clarifying how those agreements come about would be really helpful. But the points that Director Geary and Director Wolf were making around CBOs is something I don't quite understand, is what agreements do we have besides the contract for a CBO who goes after one of the grants? Is there a formal agreement with a CBO and a school every time? And just that's one part of the question, because the question is for the entire, what is our entire policy and process around agreements with outside organization, and who approves them? Because in this document, there's reference to the Seattle King County Health Department for the health centers in our schools. And so, do we have an actual formal agreement between the district and Seattle King County? Do we have a partnership agreement already in place on that, or is that another one that's going to be coming forward? Because based on the implementation plan, the dollars come through to King County and then to us. So that's a question that I think should be clarified in the partnership agreement, and I'm wondering if we have the answer of what is in place now.
So I don't have all the details for how the public health, but all of those dollars, Seattle, the King County Public Health, they put those out for bid for each of the school sites. So that we have 3 new school sites that are going out for bid in the next week or so. And those, if it's group health, like Kaiser Permanente or whatever the groups are, neighbor care, they actually have to go through a whole process with the county that the county manages. Then they have to enter an agreement once they're awarded with the county, where the school and the district is a part of the conversation. Then they execute a contract at the school level.
But where do we have a district level agreement with Seattle King County? Because it seems like the dollars are coming through them, and then they're also funding nurses based on the implementation plan.
So at this point, Brent and I, in another separate conversation, are working with the county on getting an overarching partnership agreement that is not in place yet. There are maybe incremental stuff based on funding, but we don't have an overarching agreement with the county managing this work. It's school-based work at this point.
Would that fall into the project agreements? Because the first bullet under additional agreements is project agreements. And project agreements, just for my clarity and for everyone's clarity, are the specific projects of direct awards that are coming from the levy into Seattle Public Schools. So it would include the preschool program. And every year there's a project agreement, and that comes through us. There's a whole process, and we approve that. And so are you saying that Seattle King County would be a project agreement and a yearly thing, or there should be a partnership agreement developed between the district and the county agency? Like, I'm not sure which I care. I just want to make sure we have our agreements in line and that we're clear on who's doing what and the appropriate things.
So health is an annual project agreement, and it's an annual project agreement, and between the city and the county, and then the individual agreements at the schools between the county and between the Kaiser Permanente and the schools. Those are renegotiated annually as well.
So that's awesome, because it sounds like the systems are in place and that we have them. Why I'm asking these questions and what's not clear from just reading the document, because that's where this is the policy that we're approving, is in the project agreement section. It doesn't actually call out the names of the specific projects. And I think it would be really helpful to say, these are the direct awards that we are expecting out of the implementation plan and the specific projects that are expected, so that we have that clarity of, we have Seattle Preschool Program, we have the health one, and we know which project agreements are part of this, so that I think it would be really helpful to be clear on the direct awards, because the direct awards that are coming down are handled very differently. They come to the district, there's a project agreement, we process all of this way, versus the competitive grants, which are school-based, and that's opened up to folks outside of the district as well. And clarity on what are the direct awards and the projects that we're expecting and that we're agreeing that we're planning to work on, because the implementation plan says it, would create some clarity in my mind.
I don't know that this will help, but let me try. Clearly, we're at the intro to a 7-year process. So it's not possible to put into a partnership agreement at the beginning all of the specific partners and the activities that will take place over the next 7 years. And the partnership agreement is a high-level policy statement that is under review and approval by you and the City Council. To that end, the systems that you're asking about, which will unveil themselves over the next 7 years, will come up and they'll go through review in this entity based on grant size and the ability to make sure that it's aligned to all of our other activities. So I hope that answers your question. So when we're back here for action, we won't be able to say, well, in this section we'll be doing exactly these things. I do want to emphasize a key point, and this is what the last 3 months' work between staffs has done, and that is, forgive the colloquialism, we're trying to avoid random acts of goodness. And we are very explicitly looking towards targeted effort to assist the needs of our students, just like our strategic plan is designed to do. And it will raise the boats for all of our students, and it will be aligned, and it will have various components that will unveil themselves as the work progresses throughout the next several years. I hope that answers the question.
I think it does, but what it does leave open is things like the original intent of the legislation for things, for example, like the family support workers, and the intent around that legislation and the work to have 15, that the intent around that, and that actually be carried through and not forgotten by leaving it so open-ended that we can change the projects as we go along. I have a little bit of nervousness around the lack of definition and clarity.
So Dwayne reminds me, and I was going to say the same thing. Remember that we're operating under an ordinance, so we are required to follow same. There's a certain amount of broadness in all of that, back to my point of being aligned and doing things that we need to do. So hopefully that answers your question. I am a little bit concerned from some of your comments that you're going to expect us to come back with a completely different version of this partnership agreement.
No, I actually don't think I'm personally even requesting that. I wanted clarity on some things, and it sounds to me like, I mean, maybe we could, I don't know if there are any other comments or thoughts that other folks may have to reflect back, but it might be helpful to summarize what you think you heard and what maybe the potential changes that will be made and won't be made, because that would be helpful for us to know.
So I will try to bifurcate it very simply. So I heard a specific request around Section 3 that we would clarify wording in that to make sure that policies are approved by City Council and this board. That we will work on. I heard the rest of the questions around how does this actually work, which we are more than happy to spend time. Perhaps we need another work session. We can do more 2x2s so that it raises your comfort about all these details, some of which are unknown at this point, without having to go back and renegotiate. For those of you on the board that aren't fully aware, I don't know how much time we've spent in meetings, many hours, and a lot of back and forth drafts on this partnership agreement. I think there were 11, maybe more than that, but 11 for sure. And those have to go back and forth between lawyers, et cetera. And again, so I want to be cautionary that we won't be bringing in an entirely different document in a couple of weeks.
I also heard consensus around some language around the deference to SPS for education. Is that something, do you think, is possible to
We could put that in the intent language, and we'll see what the city says about that.
And then also the school-based organizations, I feel like there's consensus around that language being added that Director Geary suggested. And then the partnership, like the changing,
Hang on,
the
time
massaging
out.
of that. So, sorry.
It looks
So
as though that
Director
you've got
Geary-
questions.
Yes.
Gentlemen?
Thank you. Appreciate that. Director Gary's point about the language in the section that is lifted straight out of the voter approved, we won't change that, obviously, because that's
But you
the
can
document.
add to it. There's nothing that says that you can't add on authentic communication with parents.
Others.
And I would submit students as well in adding that collaboration. The ordinance doesn't restrict you.
Correct.
You can
That's true.
do an and,
Right.
correct?
Yeah.
Is that philosophy
I'm
acceptable?
looking at my partner here. This is a two-phase activity.
Yeah, it's a two-phase.
Yeah,
What you're saying definitely makes sense, but what I was just notified by the partnership and implementation plan expert that a lot of the stuff that we're talking about is in like certain sections of the partnership agreement that's called out, but it's just at a very high level. So what you were just talking about, what I was telling Mr. Nielsen, was that is in section 12 of the partnership agreement.
So again, I'm wondering if I understand the board's desire. I'm wondering if work sessions to clarify are helpful and how much in this policy document is necessary in order to add comfort for you and your support.
Go ahead. Sorry.
It would be helpful if you all could send us exactly where that information is.
We can do that.
And being against authentic communication is like being against apple pie. And
If you're on a diet, perhaps we have to. Never mind.
I'm gonna rule you out of order, Mr. Deputy. Again, I think we want the same things. I think we want the clarity. And if we don't have it, then 2 years from now, we want to beat you with it, okay? That's fair. Director Mack and then Director DeWolf, please. Director DeWolf's been waiting quite some time.
Oh, excellent. I just wanted to also mention that I felt like we had consensus around clarifying the facilities language in section 13 to be more clear, that it's not just making space available for staff and that there's collaboration and referencing other agencies. Was that something that you think it's possible to do? Because that, for me, on our facilities, that's really such an important aspect of this agreement, that we actually honor the existing partnership agreement with the city on our planning processes and reference it here. That
So to answer your question is everything that we've heard, we're gonna go back and take a look and see how we can, as a group, you know, what makes the most sense for us to, with working with legal and everything to meet your needs. But we're also gonna, because a lot of the questions that we're asking, that you guys are asking, we want to make sure that we can highlight it in the partnership agreement, and then you know, we just kind of create that dialogue with you all. Just to be clear, we totally understand what you're saying. We just want to make sure that the questions that you're asking, that is highlighted and you guys can see where it is. Sure. Okay.
Okay, and then, Mr. Deputy, what do you see as the next steps for informing the board of those clarifications and/or additions?
I'll start with,
Because this comes back in 2 weeks.
Yes, we don't, thank you. We do not have a lot of time. So I don't want to overpromise here that you're going to be seeing an extremely different document. We will definitely address the part in the third section, and we will look at the other suggestions. I'm assuming that those behind me have been taking notes to make sure that we do all of those. I will say that our penchant is going to be spare in the changes to the actual document, just so that the city council, who you also know has to go through the same process. And I think it's important that we all try to stay as aligned as possible and still make both parties comfortable and satisfied. I also think that a lot of the questions that you're raising tonight are not really policy partnership questions, they're implementation questions. And I want to keep those separate so we can answer them for you and you're comfortable with it, but not try to wordsmith a document into a place where, to rephrase your apt points, 2 years from now we'll say, oh, we left something out. Spare is often good. So that will be our intent.
Director DeWolf, at long last.
Thank you. We've been using the word consensus a lot, and I just wanted to, Director Burke has been working on policy and procedure 1620, and in it, it asks that in the spirit of collaboration, board members are committed to sensitive workload issues, et cetera, and will work with the chair. So I want to be thoughtful about what are the things that are things we're just elevating that might need clarity, and what are the things that we just need to follow the procedure of going through, likely the exec committee, to follow through on actual asks. More just to flag. I'm not sure how the process is.
The fact that I missed the line that you brought up, and I'm embarrassed to tell you that, in executive committee, and it's a very good catch. I don't know the answer to that. I do think that we're all smart people. I think we're collaborative people, and we want the same thing. And I think staff has heard us. So I guess I'd like to see what comes out of this process. And Lord knows, we're very capable of speaking up.
And just wanted to let you all know, I don't know how I forgot, tomorrow is our levy oversight committee. And Director Mack and Superintendent are appointed members of it.
Both shy violets.
And we'll be talking about this tomorrow then as well. So just wanted
Okay.
to share that with you.
Director Pinkham, and then we're wrapping this up and moving on, folks.
I'll just take another hour here.
No, you won't.
Okay, 5 minutes.
No,
For
you
priority
won't.
students and communities, students with disabilities aren't listed there, but we do talk about students with disabilities in the SPP and SP Plus. Does that almost like intentionally say, oh, we're only going to worry about students with disabilities in preschool? What about beyond there? So I was wondering if we can include the priority students, include students with disabilities in Section 5. Also, you say including, what about foster students? I know there's a bunch of different underrepresented students that we can look at that are underserved. Who do we include? And then other question is just as far as when we say Hispanic Latino, do we need to make sure we say Latinx to be inclusive of gender issues, male, female?
So you're talking about Section 5 in the priorities, and I think there's this question parallels what we discussed in the strategic plan. We don't want to try to name everyone because I'm sure we'll leave someone out. So we're looking for something that is inclusive and that makes sure that we're not avoiding recognition of those that are requiring and needing and deserving the services, but we won't be looking to include all groups if that
Yeah.
works for you.
So could we probably put, groups including but not limited to,
Right.
something, that kind of little bit of language as far as underserved. And then about the Hispanic Latinx, do we want to
We'll
make
check
that kind of
that.
scrivener?
You're correct, it should be Latinx, thank you.
Okay, moving on. Thank you very much for coming down and hanging with us. Much appreciated. Number 2, Board Resolution 2018-19-8, in support of interlocal procurement agreements using U.S. government contracts. This came before ANF March 18th, 4. Approval of this item would grant the superintendent the authority to delegate authority to district procurement management to enter into cost-effective interlocal cooperative procurement agreements based on U.S. government contracts pursuant to the requirements of RCW 39.32.090. CFO Jolynn Berge, take it away, please.
Good evening, Jolynn Berge, Chief Financial Officer. So by way of background, in May 2018, the State Auditor's Office issued a management letter to Seattle Public Schools regarding the need to improve practices around interlocal government cooperative procurement agreements, to use federal government procurement contracts without needing to validate and document alignment of legal requirements and procurement thresholds. A board resolution is required to authorize such activity. Without this resolution, the district can't efficiently use the U.S. government procurement contracts as allowed by RCW. The resolution increases the procurement options the district can consider, and the resolution was drafted to ensure that the district will be in full compliance with Washington law and receive the benefits of entering into interlocal cooperative agreements as part of its comprehensive approach to fiscally responsible purchasing practices.
Can
For
you
the
do
sta-
that in plain language in one paragraph, please?
Yeah, we can't use federal contracts without the resolution.
Okay, thank you. Comments, questions, concerns from my colleagues? This is a compliance issue, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. Director DeWolf, please. Oh, you looked like you were going for it. Seeing none. Number 3, approval of amendment to Maxim Healthcare Services Contract, RFQ 02758, came before ANF March 18th, 4. Consideration, approval of this item would authorize the superintendent to amend the contract with Maxim Healthcare Services in the amount of $546,800 under the umbrella of RFQ 02758, parens regarding specially designed instruction for a revised total contract amount of $950,000 for behavior technicians and BCBA. What's that acronym stand for, please?
Oh, that's BCBA is a behavioral consultant. I'll have to break it down. I'll throw it to you.
Well, when it comes back for action, I'm
Yeah, I
going
get
to
it
call
in
you
there.
out. Acronym FOUL. Support in the form of the draft contract amendment attached to the school board action report with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent to take any necessary actions to implement the contract modification. A quick recap of why we're looking at this and what it means to us, please, kind sir.
Yeah. Good evening. Wyatt Jesse, Chief Student Support Services. Board Certified Behavioral Analyst is BCBA. I'll get that broken down. We'll get that modified for you. This is, again, just a modified amount with one of our many providers that provide support personnel under special education. Again, as mandated under the Individuals with Disability Education Act, we have to provide services that are listed on students' IEPs. In this particular case, this particular service agency had additional personnel that specialized in helping with behavior technicians and, again, BCBAs. So for them to work directly with students, right now we're looking at 22 students. Most of those students and those services are reimbursed, actually, by OSPI through the safety net process.
And do we not have our own staff that are BCBA folks? Or are
No.
they difficult to find, et cetera, et cetera?
They're difficult to find. We're looking to add BCBA staff, and actually PESB, which is the board, the section of OSPI which does board certification for professionals, is looking around, I believe September is what I was hearing, around making them formally as a certificated member here in Washington State.
Will that help us?
Yes, I like that. Yes.
Why?
Because then it would be actually straight honest. It's going to be an identified certificated position that could be represented underneath the union. So that's one thing that the union does look at.
Thank you. Other questions, comments, concerns for Chief Jesse? Seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Number 4, BEX 4, award construction contract P5121, bid number B11823 to Jody Miller Construction with Wing Luke Elementary School Replacement Project Phase 2. Came before Ops March 14th. 4. Approval. Approval of this item would provide authorization for the superintendent to enter into a construction contract in the amount of 31 million, whoa, we wish, $496,750, which includes the base bid plus alternate number 1, 2D, 3B, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, plus Washington State. I'll get you for that. For the Wing Luke Elementary School Replacement Project Phase 2. Take it away, COO Podesta.
Fred Podesta, Chief Operations Officer. This is a construction contract to replace Wing Luke Elementary School. This may have come to the board before because this is the second time this project has been bid. It was bid last fall. It was bid against last month. We were able to value engineer and get better bids this time around, so it's more in line with our budget. We've been working.
And a value engineer, kind sir.
Value engineering is looking for opportunities to reduce construction costs and how things are designed. And here the savings were found mostly in site preparation. The original plan had a lot of excavating and grading and building of retaining walls, and we found ways to build a school without it. The capital team has been working closely with the school design advisory team and has come up with a design that honors the traditions of the neighborhood and creates a welcoming open space for a lot of students who walk to school and a lot of parents who like to visit students during school hours. So the classrooms are designed so you can observe classes from common spaces, and that there are places to each classroom has display cases and cabinets for students to kind of show cultural items. So I think it's going to be a beautiful school and a great asset to that neighborhood.
Thank you. Questions, comments, concerns? Director Patu.
Is it normal to have more than one day of bidding, going through bidding process?
No, bids always open at a prescribed day and time. So if you're asking the multiple bids, no, we try to get our bids done once. We didn't like the bids we got. We had 2 bidders, so we put it out again, with some new specs where we thought would save money. We had 4 bidders the second time, and we got the savings we were looking for.
Thank you.
Director Burke, please.
For clarification, either now or on the next round, can you share what was the budget amount? What was the original bid?
Sure.
And then this 31 million is the revised amount. That'd be helpful.
Do you have a guesstimate now?
Well, yes, we were looking for about $5 million in savings, and we achieved that.
Thank you. Other questions, comments, concerns? Seeing none, number 5, OSPI Distress School Grant, award construction contract K1342, bid number 11824 to CDK Construction Services, Inc. for the Eckstein Middle School exterior sunshade installation project, came before Ops March 14th. 4. Approval of this item would provide authorization for the superintendent to enter into a construction contract in the amount of $348,000, including base bid plus alternate number 1, plus Washington State sales tax, and to authorize the superintendent to accept the distressed school grant funds for the Eckstein Middle School exterior sunshade installation project. Questions, comments, or concerns from my colleagues? Director Geary.
I will have a very happy community around these sunshades. This is one of these historic, everybody's boiling up in the building.
I
So-
see Director DeWolf fanning himself. So the southern exposure in this middle school creates very, very hot classrooms. So being able to control
I
heat gain.
still have this vision though that we take some of this asphalt out and we just plant a bank of trees on that south side. I think it would be beautiful, but I've been told that's not possible.
We do have other
So,
projects to help
I
with
guess
the
so.
HVAC and the comfort level in that school.
Great.
To be continued. Number 6, BTA 4, Ward Construction Contract K5113 to King County Directors Association, KCDA, and Musco Sports Lighting, LLC, for the Garfield High School Athletic Field Lighting Project. Came before Ops March 14th, 4. Approval of this item would provide authorization for the superintendent to enter into a construction contract in the amount of $408,714. There are no cents on any of these tonight. Why is that? Plus, Washington State sales tax with any minor additions, deletions, and modifications deemed necessary by the superintendent, and to take any necessary actions to implement the contract.
As you know, athletic fields are a prized commodity in our system, and with later bell times, we need to work later into the evening to have practices, so we've been lighting many of our fields. Ballard High School, Roosevelt High School, Robert Eaglestaff Elementary, and we'll do Garfield and Cleveland as well. And so we are using a purchasing cooperative of King County administrators, which gives us favorable pricing, and given the city's energy code and light dispersion requirements, there's really only one manufacturer that sells lights that will work in our application that we found, and we can get those at attractive pricing and efficiently through this purchasing cooperative.
Questions, comments, concerns from my colleagues? We have heard a fair amount of pushback from our neighborhoods, and I believe that we are using less glaring,
We're using
more focused lights now than
using
we did in the past. Is that correct, sir?
LEDs, light emitting diodes, for your acronym.
Thank you.
That produce something like less than 2 candle feet of light when you're within 3 feet of the edge of the lit area. So these lights are meant to kind of control the dispersion of light, where the light lands on the ground. These are lights on high standard, so if you're far away, you see some brightness. It's unavoidable, but given the constraints of physics, I think we're picking lights that will have the least impact on neighborhoods and the best benefit for our athletes and people that want to use these fields.
And we're good neighbors with the city and the athletic leagues as well. Number 7, BEX 4 and BTA 4. Approval of the constructability report. Didn't know that was a word. Resolution number 2018-19, certifying the intent to construct. And resolution number 2018-19-20, certifying a 5-year use, 30-year building life for the Daniel Bagley Elementary School Modernization and Addition Project. Came before Ops March 14th, 4. Consideration, approval of this item would provide required approvals for the constructability report, intent to construct resolution and 5-year use, 30-year building life resolution as required by the Washington Administrative Code, part of the Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, OSPI in parens, D as in dog form, approval process to receive state funding assistance for the Daniel Bagley Elementary School Modernization and Addition Project.
Because the project has state funding, this is a procedural step where we get outside engineers to review our designs and certify to the Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction that our project can be constructed, that we will be able to have an educational purpose for the prescribed number of years. And really is an important QA step that we value. The report is attached to the bar if you're interested, but to go and go through with fine detail of our design and make suggestions, and these makes our projects better, and it's also required if we want this funding.
Richard Best gave us a tutorial on all the D forms
Yes.
about 6 months ago, which was very helpful for us, frankly.
We're rich in process.
Number 8, BTA 3, BEX 4, Resolution 2018-19-13. Excuse me, Director.
It's our B-form sheet that we all have.
Oh, I thought you were wanting to talk about it.
No, I was just showing that we actually.
Carol Merrill, I like it. Okay. Number 8 and last, I might add. BTA 3, BEX 4, Resolution 2018-19-13, final acceptance of contract K5069 with CDA Construction Services, Inc. for the seismic upgrades at Salmon Bay K through 8 at Monroe School and the Decatur School project. Came before Ops March 14th for approval. Approval of this item would give final acceptance of contract K5069 with CDK Construction Services, Inc. for the seismic upgrades at Salmon Bay K through 8 and Monroe School and Decatur School projects. Board approval allows the district to submit required documents to the State of Washington Department of Labor and Industries, Department of Revenue, and Employment Security Department and close out the project, including authorizing the release of project retainage. And let me just say something for the record. We are a little punchy up here, and we've made a few jokes, but we take this extraordinarily seriously. We have 2 folks on our board that have developed real expertise on this and that attend the BEX Oversight Committee. We have a board director that goes through every change order on capital projects and has for the last several years. So please do not mistake our good humor for being flippant about spending millions and millions of dollars of the public's funds. Take it away, COO Podesta.
And again, this is a closeout of this contract. We have the work was satisfactorily performed at Salmon Bay and at Decatur Elementary School. These were seismic improvements, and we need to close the contract and pay the contractor about $75,000 in retainage.
And I think we should have a round of applause for every time we close out one of these. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yay, confetti. I need to get those confetti things. Oh, shoot. So I'll bring the confetti next week.
Clap twice. This meeting is adjourned at 9:04. Thanks, folks, very much for hanging with us.